Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Girl Next Door podcast. I'm your host, Sean, aka your number one source of fashion related, but occasionally great pop culture takes. Today, we are going to be ranking horror movie tropes, but before I get into it, I got two things actually. Number one, just want to remind everybody that I stream every single episode of this on twitch.tv/Girl Next Door podcast. Feel free to throw me a follow. Come on through, hang out, join the discussion. You're always welcome. And then number two, I should update the stream title so it has. I added some new chat commands. Um, it's not necessarily for a fun reason, but I feel like for me it was important to at least address this because I mean it's been like on my mind, and it feel as much as I do think it's important to be like, I want to keep things fun, I want to keep things light. um and I don't want to go like super into it anyway because I feel like I've been on my soapbox so much about it today, with my family and with like some other people that like um have differing opinions about it, which is like whatever. But I do want to say that in case you're watching this in the future, this is like no longer like technically super relevant information. I wanted to address the school shooting that happened very recently in Texas and send my condolences out. And also, I have thrown in some new chat commands. I'm going to also leave these in the YouTube description. There's a couple of links, actually, so let me type them out, and then I'll explain both of them in a sec. But let me switch to the little window while we do it. So I have two things. One is just sort of like a information resource in case you feel a little bit helpless like me sometimes when we discuss gun violence in this country, and mass shootings, and you want to be a little bit more educated in like how everything works with like the laws, like how you can sort of help from the legislative side of things, and like discussing with like your senator and representatives, and just generally being informed on certain things. Everytown.org is like one of many helpful resources in my opinion when it comes to filling you in with information like that. And then another, you can also donate there, but I'm also going to throw in a I just realized like probably how weird this is gonna look in the YouTube chat box when you watch this later, but on stream it'll look fine. But another thing is, if you're like me and it can sometimes feel a little bit like when you do want to send financial support, that sometimes you're throwing it into like a big abyss, and while it's like a great like charity or nonprofit, it can be kind of hard to gauge your own personal contributions sometimes. For me, what helps me feel like I'm a little bit more in control of what's going on is like I personally like to donate directly to the families like involved. So I have like a list of GoFundMe's that are like verified by the platform, that are specifically for the family members and affected community members. Again, it's up to you. You don't have to donate. Obviously, it's just good to stay informed and stay aware. But if you're like me and you want to sort of see a little bit more of like an immediate and not instant, but a little bit more of like a tangible impact, I guess, if you want to be charitable in that way, I would recommend checking out some of these GoFundMe's, because I think the families and the people who have started them would like really appreciate it. But again, no pressure. I I hate sort of opening with like something very heavy, but it's just such a big thing on my mind this week. I think it's on like on everybody's mind this week. Um, but in the future, I'm hoping people, for whatever reason, if they end up finding this video like years and years and years down the line, like this becomes like so much of an artifact of the past, of like a shittier time um where like there's going to be more common sense gun laws and preventative measures to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen. But again, I don't want to get soapboxy about it, but I mean, I think most of us can agree that you shouldn't have to be scared that like your kid or your little brother or your little sister or your family member or relative or friend who like goes to school isn't going to come back. Like nobody should have to live with that fear. You know, everybody should feel like school, the worst thing you'll have to deal with at school is like they don't have like a good school lunch that day. Like they don't have the dino nuggies. That's a very stupid point to make, but I don't know. I'm hoping that sort of like gets it across. I'm a little bit flustered about this because it's like it has made the week very heavy, which is why I did want to inject some fun. I was also feeling, if we're gonna get like a little TMI, I was feeling kind of down, and I was like, I have no idea when I'm gonna like stream Thursday. I honestly thought maybe I would try streaming yesterday, and it just ended up like not working out. I had like a ton of tech issues on my ends, where I was like really scared that I didn't know if I was going to be streaming for the rest of the week. That's how bad they ended up being. But they resolved themselves. I had a little bit of inspiration of being like, and by inspiration, I mean I went through my notes app that has stream ideas in them. And one of the first ones that I wrote many, many, many weeks ago when I was like sort of starting to brainstorm was I wanted to, as like a total scaredy cat who is so bad at watching horror movies, does like a tier ranking of horror movie tropes. And I've thought about doing this stream in the past. I've been very close to doing this type of stream in the past, but I couldn't really find a tier list that had the same level of detail as the fanfiction trope tier list that we did a while ago, because this would just like only gonna have like, a lot of them only had maybe like 8 to 10 max categories, and or not categories, elements. And for me, I'm just like, I mean, I can talk about literally whatever. I could stretch those talking points out probably, because that's just how annoying I am. But I feel like it wouldn't feel like a complete video. So I'm just like, I turned to my boyfriend who I hung out with this week. I'm just like, what if I just make it? Like, I've never done tier maker before. I probably like messed it up like a tiny bit, but I was working on it all day yesterday. My boyfriend can attest to that I was being very, very, very preoccupied with just like thinking of a bunch of like different ideas for it. We ended up with, I think, 130 something, 100, I think it's 134 different tropes that I'm going to be ranking today. This 100% could be a terrible idea for a stream, but I was personally very excited to do it, and like sort of brought back a lot of joy into my week. Which it's probably a little bit sad for me to say that, as like somebody who's like goes back and forth between loving and hating scary movies, as somebody who's naturally very jumpy and very gore averse, if that makes any sense. But I don't know, I was really excited to do this. I'm glad that that making tier lists was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I was really worried that I was gonna have to edit a ton of shit, and it was gonna be super complicated, but it's not. For those who want to like try it, I'm going to have the link in the YouTube description when I upload this later. I think I've Ooh, I don't think I have like a command set. Of course, I have like a bunch of like other chat commands set up, but I didn't think of one to like have the list. But that's okay. If you're interested in doing it later, like it's gonna be in the YouTube description. I don't know why you would really want to though, because it's kind of long. But I personally find these fun, and I love streaming these too because it's like it's it's pretty straightforward content. I wouldn't say it's easy content because obviously you still have to try to be entertaining, but um, it's very directed content. If you're somebody who gets like very lost very easily like me, then it's kind of like the best way to go. Um, I tried to sort of gauge it in the pre-stream about how the size is looking on this. um I have a couple different view modes in case it's a little bit too difficult to read. I tried my best. I feel like it looks like okay, but obviously if somebody tells me like, hey, it's too small, I will switch to one that is easier to read. I'm very concerned about that, like I'll think it looks fine now, and then when I upload it later, it's gonna be like the text is gonna be super tiny. But this was about the same dimensions though that I had for like the fanfiction ones, and that was okay if I remember correctly. But again, anybody has an issue with it, let me know. I will not be offended. I will probably feel very grateful that I no longer have to guess whether I'm just like tripping over it or not. But with that very, very unnecessarily long intro out of the way, we're gonna start. This is gonna be a very long stream, I'm assuming. So I hope you got your snacks, your drinks, or whatever. I will be holding myself accountable for taking breaks too, because last time I was terrible at reminding myself to take like a little 5-minute break here and there. So I'm gonna hold myself more accountable too. But again, starting the list, here are the categories. The top, we have literally inject these into my bloodstream. These are ones that not only do I think they're iconic in that they're like essentials, but there's like the added element of like, granted, it's so iconic and literally inject these into my bloodstream are sort of like in the same realm. But the reason why I have this at the top is because it's definitely more for like me. Like for iconic, I'm like acknowledging that like this is like a horror staple. You know, there's no other place for it to go but the top. But is it my top? Who knows? I might regret how many tiers I made because I always do, but it made sense in my head when I was making it. Then below it, it's good. Like it's still better than mid, but would I like throw it into like my faves? No. Then there's not my fave, but I get the appeal. Yeah, that was pretty self-explanatory. I think anyway. It's just like it's like an apples and oranges kind of deal. For actually no, that's not the right metaphor at all. Oh wait, no, maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe like, you know, maybe you like this and it's good, and that's great, and I love that for you. And I recognize why it's popular, but it's just not. It's not really my scene. But I don't think it's bad. Like I don't think it's trash. I'm not gonna like shame you for being into it, obviously. Below that, it depends. This could really swing either way. It could be like fine, but it could also be like really dog shit. Below that, we have trash. Originally, I wanted to do like boo, corny, tomato, tomato, tomato. But the tomato emoji does not look good on TierMaker when you try to put it in the category names. So I was like, damn, okay, well, I guess I can only say that. And then did I already say trash? Oh my god, my brain is totally fried right now. Okay, well, trash, and then actually problematic. So these are like, I'm canceling them. don't even put them near me. I can't even joke about how bad they are. They're just like, they're objectively awful. I can already see one of them that I have at the top that is definitely going to be going into actually problematic, and that is the killer is mentally ill. I tried to I tried to organize these like list-wise in like the best way that I could, sort of pre-stream. So I was like dragging them around because like when I did upload this, I was not thinking about organizing them by categories, which is not smart, but that's okay. We're living with our decisions. But for this first stretch, it's going to be related to the killers themselves. Obviously, not every horror movie has like a killer explicitly involved in there, or at least like not in like the same like typical or archetypical. No, hello. What's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't have like, it doesn't always have to have what we recognize as like, you know, like the slasher in like this like movie, because like sometimes it can be like a group of people, sometimes it's an unseen force, and sometimes it's like something completely different. I wanted to focus on killers, but I do have antagonists sort of just in general on here as well, and like maybe even some like abstract ones. Like for example, we have the villain was family trauma all along. So this is like your Hereditaries, this is your, oh god, what are some like fucked up family ones I can think of? I would say I'm just thinking of the Vivitch. But I think that's more than just, I mean, that encapsulates like more than just family trauma. Like that's like demons, that's like Puritans, that's like misogyny. That's like a lot, but I also just immediately think it's like, oh yeah, that family is like super fucked. I personally, I maybe I'm a little bit messed up, but like I do like a good family. We're starting off like hot at the top. I should throw this out. There's going to be a lot in the top category, which might be boring, but or at least I foresee it as there being like all in the top. I also forget like a lot of the ones that I put on here, so like there's still an element of surprise. I didn't like pre-plan like who's gonna go where. I was just sort of very stream of consciousness writing these down and creating these like as I was like just hanging out with my boyfriend and then just like uploaded them all today. So but I have a feeling that like I'm probably gonna have to weed through the top tier later on, because I'm gonna put too much stuff there, because I'm just like, I'm not even like an avid horror fan consistently, but like I do love messy shit, and I feel like horror movies have like a really strong propensity to be messy as fuck. They can also be really shit and be really problematic, but that can be said for a lot of genres of film, not just horror. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I think creepy dolls are boring. Like, I wouldn't say that they're trash, but like they're so overdone at this point, and they don't really do anything for me. Like they're just weird. I think like in real life, I definitely hate creepy dolls, but like in movies, I just think they're tacky. I don't know if anybody else kind of feels that way about it. Cause like dolls do be kind of fucking creepy, but like in a movie, they always make them stupid. Granted, if you're going for like a comedic tone, you know, if like you're like in your Chucky vibe, I guess that's like one where you acknowledge that it is kind of goofy, it is like a weird concept, then like that's okay, or can be okay. But like for the most part, like, am I going to be like chilled by like a creepy doll in a movie? Not really, to be honest. Demonic possession, I'll put it in iconic, but it's like kind of high iconic. My reasoning being, and I have this down here, but I do love a good exorcism. Creepy dolls have become dated thanks to Child's Play. Thank you. Also, hi, welcome in. All right. So I would say honestly the same with creepy twins. I think creepy twins are like as a creepy twin myself, I find creepy twins kind of boring. Um I don't know that I'd say that they're trash because like I don't roll my eyes when I see them because like there is like a little bit of like a David Lynch like kind of element that you can have with creepy twins that I can I can maybe fringe enjoy with them as like an aesthetic, but like if you're putting them like front and center instead of just like letting them be like weird like little gremlins in the background, um then it's like I don't care for them. But I don't feel that way enough to put it into pens. Um because that is like a hyper specific setting to throw them in, if that makes any sense. Um Killer is just misunderstood. To be honest, I feel like I would love to see this one a little bit more. I know it's like kind of like Frankenstein-y a bit, and it can also be sort of hard to pull off if like if your killer is like, I mean, they're, you know, they're a killer. It's like hard to justify a lot of those actions in at least like this genre of a movie. It's one thing if you're framed as the protagonist the entire time, but like if like at if near the end you have to like, or even like the third act twist, you have to almost almost subvert it a bit. And it's like you better do a good ass job on it. But like as a concept, I kind of fuck with it. I think when horror movies are such a, I mean movies in general can be, but like I think the horror genre is really good at addressing social issues in a little bit what I think is like kind of a more accessible way than maybe something that's like high sci-fi or even something that's like a period drama. Because it just gets to put the entertainment first all of the time. But you can just like go with like a really simple message, and like the idea that a killer is like a surrogate for like a certain group that is like misunderstood, or they're endemic of like a specific issue. I personally really like the concept behind that. Does it mean that I'm fully in the normal people scare me, we're gonna like fetishize serial killers camp? No, absolutely not. Also, I'm just realizing now I guess it's not really a trope, but I do kind of wish I had thrown it on the list now. I didn't put the killer is hot, or the killer is a hot person, like on this list, and maybe I should have, because I feel like there is like, it is interesting when you have a killer that is just like really playing into like the pretty privilege aspect of it. And it's like, it doesn't mean, obviously it doesn't mean that I'm like in the camp of like, oh my god, they're hot because they're a serial killer. It's just like, no, it's like I like this actor, they're like doing something for me consistently, and seeing them get to have fun in like a villain role can be fun. I'm not a pervert, I swear. Nothing's scarier than a hot killer, period. Also, I'd go as far to say creepy twins are generally a neutral idea because of comedies. I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe it's just because like I got tired of being referred to as a creepy twin as like a kid, because I'm a twin, but at the same time I totally get like the memes around adult twins, because a lot of them are true. The ones that aren't are like I think the twincest ones are pretty dumb, but I think that like nobody really means that though. Yes, Jennifer's Body, iconic movie. And I feel like that also, I mean, that like that fits in with like Killer is Misunderstood as well, in my opinion anyway. I think she's always been kind of framed as like a sympathetic antagonist, quote unquote, though. I don't know, I've seen like a lot of very interesting takes on Jennifer's Body in like the past 5 years. I know it's been sort of revived as like as a cult film, and the discussions around it have been going around for a bit, and have definitely like very Tumblr. But it's like a good movie. But yeah, no, I'm a Megan Fox stan through and through. I think some of like the engagement stuff, I think they're engaged now, right? Um, is like kind of is kind of cringe, but there's like kind of like a mid to late 2000s charm to how like the type of cringe that they can be. So I kind of respect it a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna say now, as a concept, I think the killer is stolen from the internet. Um, I just don't like it. I wouldn't say that there's like never been a version of it that's been like okay. But like it just kind of reads as plagiarism to me a lot. I mean, it is kind of straight up plagiarism because you're going after a story that was like sort of compounded on by like a bunch of like people on the internet, spread word of mouth, to the point where it's hard to source the origin of the story, which means that like they can't come out and be like, hey, you stole my idea, because it's essentially just going to be treated as like free domain. And because of that, like you'll get like a ton of these like movies that are just ripping off creepypastas, and to me, I think that's trash. I think that's shit doo-doo baby behavior. Oh, you did you peep the villain in society? We live in a society, my dude. Of course I was gonna put it on. I think I feel like it's such a classic. It's like it's like, oh, maybe we were, they did this, they killed all these people and like in this massacre, but like maybe we as a society did this to them. I feel like that can be like that can either be like, it can be either generally like good commentary, but it can also just be really stupid in an entertaining and corny way. So personally, I think the real villain is society, despite the fact that it is like almost always super cringe. I'm gonna put in iconic. I would argue that that's kind of a staple of horror, like in general, is like an element of like, it's, this movie is like, it's a cautionary tale that's like holding a mirror up to the audience to sort of like reflect in like their own imperfections, The villain of society is probably the hardest sell. It has a slippery slope element to it. Oh, absolutely. Especially if like the slant of like the movie is it's like from like a really like cringe like everything is getting too woke now like angle. Which we'll get into. We'll get into one of my least favorite villain. We might as well do it now because it's right here. I hate the villain who's queer coded. I'm gonna be honest. It doesn't mean we haven't gotten some iconic villains, but like I feel like the overarching like theme of the killer is queer coded is like, not only is it just like homophobic, more often than not it's sort of slanted to be more transphobic, because it's just feeding into like it's the quote unquote man in a dress horror thing. It's just like, okay, first of all, like that whole there's a lot to unpack there. Obviously, I hope it's apparent by now that like how, at least like for me and for like everybody here who is like getting an impression of me, obviously trans rights, duh. Trans men are men, trans women are women. If you are gonna be shitty about it, like, there's the door. But yeah, no, I hate the killer is queer coded. I like Disney villains that are queer coded. I like sort of harmless villains that are queer coded, because then it's just like, well, obviously, the gays are going to end up standing them, and that's fine. But I feel like when it's like framed in a horror movie and they're like a serial killer, I don't know, it rarely sits well with me. I'm completely fine with like an ogre that's little, trying to take over a kingdom, or like a badass witch who's just misunderstood, you know, killing a bunch of like knights or superheroes or whatever, being like secretly based. But like when it comes to like horror movies, there's usually like a bit of like a homophobic or transphobic slant to it, and that's not my vibe. Also, welcome on Min Bestie. Sometimes that mirror is a funhouse mirror. Like, that's tough because Wanda is said to be queer-coded. Oh, you probably hate Silence of the Lambs. Girl, okay, girl, I have... Oh my god. I feel so weird about Silence of the Lambs because it's just like, I know that they go to like... I'm gonna avoid using the outdated language that the source material has. I know that they go out of their way to say like, oh, this person isn't trans. Like they're doing this for a completely separate reason. This isn't supposed to be like reflect like, you know, our negative perceptions of like that community. But I'm just like, okay, but like the audience isn't gonna know that. They're just going to see like they're was it Buffalo Bill? I don't remember their name specifically. But they're just gonna see them and be and just kind of like throw all their biases like on them, and then likewise take those biases and bring them out to like everywhere else, you know, like not everybody obviously. I'd like to think that most people don't make that kind of connection, if that makes any sense, or at least if they do recognize it, know to separate themselves from it. But I don't know, it always felt, it's a little bit weird to me. I feel like kind of back and forth about Silence of the Lambs a lot. I think everybody feels weird about Silence of the Lambs. I mean, like it's not like it's supposed to be a movie you feel comfortable in though, so I don't know, like I don't know, it's not my place to say whether that aspect is inherently problematic or not, because I don't want to speak on behalf of anybody, but I do think it's like it does raise some eyebrows from me. All right, so to continue our little exploration into killers, well, I mean that a lot of people can't decide if it's damnable because of how far it goes to be both good, well, to be as both good but problematic. Yeah. So I think, okay, I'll be honest. Ooh, actually, how do I feel about ghosts as just like, I mean, I don't, they're kind of a staple, I would say, but to be honest, I think it depends. I like ghosts that are like sort of like warning the main characters or whatever of like the actual threat, but like ghosts that are like just the threat can be a little bit, I don't know, like they're a little bit boring, and then it throws in like the whole like, you know, are you gonna make them capable of like interacting with the physical world or not, and then like what are like the logistics of like how like ghosts work in this universe. I don't know, I feel I go a little bit back and forth on it, but I'd have a hard times. I'll say this, none of the horror movies that I absolutely love are about ghosts. There are hallucinations that like haunt the main character that you could argue are ghost adjacent, but as far as straight up ghosts is concerned, I don't really care for them in movies. I love ghost stories though, just like and also like literature and stuff like that, but for like a movie I'm kind of just like it depends. I can be convinced, but none of my faves like have them in it. I love me some Japanese ghosts. Oh, that's true. Okay, you know, I'll give you that. I feel like some Japanese ghosts like are pretty lit. I like the urban legend slash folklore elements to them. The ones that are metaphors for internal problems that haunt you and stuff. Yeah, well, those are because that's kind of like what it feels like a lot of them, at least like from a literary standpoint, when they were first introduced as like a narrative device, it really was sort of a thematic for that kind of thing. So when it's just ghosts for the sake of being ghosts, I'm kind of like, eh. Now, as far as aliens are concerned, they're not my fave because I I think a really well designed alien can be like cool. But but I really don't love like the CG heavy horror movies. I guess that was like another thing that I probably it's because it's not technically a trope, but like not all of these are technically tropes anyway. Like a lot of these are like just sort of genre related. I don't really love CG heavy horror movies. I love things that like you can tell it was made on a budget, but they did a lot with that budget. But you know, I think like a well-designed alien is fine, but then like I mean, I didn't really love the I don't love I do have this on the list, but when it comes to like supernatural pregnancies or whatever, I don't love Alien. I don't I think like I think this is why I can never get behind impreg fiction. It's because I'll just be thinking about any time an alien has like impregnated a man and then like they like explode. I just think that's kind of gross. It's not for me. But I get the appeal. Aliens can be cool. Zombies and cannibals. I'll be honest, I find them kind of boring now. I'm gonna blame 15 years of non-stop back-to-back zombie fiction for that. I don't know how everyone else feels about it. I know that's like cannibals I can be convinced on, but for zombies, I'm like a little bit, but maybe this goes closer into depends, but I feel like they're so overdone at this point. But I think cannibals can be interesting as long as it's like not I will hate if like your justification for including cannibalism in your story is to like make fun of or just horribly like typecast indigenous cultures, because I think that's I mean that's literally racism. That's literally racist to like do that. But I haven't seen a movie that's done that in a while, so thankfully, but it's like there. I have noticed it in the past. Like they'll go with like the quote unquote savages, or like I just think that's like super cringe and obviously very racist. Zombies are exhausting. I think aliens are the easiest to enter unintentional camp. That's true. I don't know. It's like I think alien movies can be fun, but not in horror. I will take aliens in literally every other genre, but in horror, it's like a little bit tricky. Vampires? So I'll be honest, I don't feel like we've gotten like a solid. Well, okay, let me rephrase this. As far as like a mainstream horror film, like not erotic thriller, not vampire thriller, not romance, not dark comedy, like strict horror with like vampires, I haven't had a mainstream one fall on my lap in a bit. The closest thing we've had is like it's like not a movie, it's like a video game. That's with like Resident Evil with like Lady D. I guess she's technically not a vampire, and she doesn't have like the elements of like typical vampires. She's like more inspired by the things that inspired vampire fiction when they started being written. I hope that is like not a super long-winded explanation. But because of that, I'm like open to it. I'm open to like more again, like there's plenty of like vampires. This kind of similar to aliens. There's plenty of vampires in genres outside of horror, but like a dedicated horror for vampires, I haven't seen a mainstream one in a bit. I know they exist, and I'm just like culturally unaware. But I don't know any of like the major ones that are in the zeitgeist right now. I mean, if people want to correct me, they 100% can, like in the comments or in chat, because I could just be stupid. Penny Dreadful did decent, but I think vampires are hard to make scary. Vampires are kind of scary because they're in positions of power or something. I've seen videos about how vampires tend to be a commentary on class. I've heard that too. Yeah. No, definitely. It's why, like, it's why I'll be impressed if it's done well. But yeah, like it's like usually, especially when, you know, it's somebody living for like a very long time. They're like accumulating a lot of generational wealth. Plus, you think of like the historical figures that like inspired certain depictions of vampires that we know today that are like very very aristocratic typically, but are also like notoriously terrible people. All right, the real villain is racism. Okay, I don't want to be misunderstood when I say this. I feel like these are kind of boring. Not only are they boring, they have like the potential to be really problematic. Like, I agree the real villain, like, don't get me wrong, I agree the real villain is racism, but like, I personally agree that the real villain is racism, but when I think of how movies handle that, it kind of just ends up being a little bit too much of like you run the risk of it really emphasizing race-based trauma and like oppression, specifically Black trauma, and like don't get like that. I mean, I would want it to be in the hands of like a Black creator if they do it, because when I think of like a white writer and director being like, okay, now we're gonna have I mean, I just think of like the Prime series Them or whatever, where like they just put this family through the most racist shit and like imagery ever. And it my fear is that like some of these movies, when people go and like see them, it's just like, are you there to be like sort of scared but like also like informed, or are you there to sort of pat yourself on the back and be like, I watched a diverse movie today? Because then I guess that's less of like an issue of like the genre itself and more of like the audience it attracts. But then the flip side of that is like, okay, but are you purposefully baiting well-intentioned white liberals to watch a bunch of like Black people be tortured by a racist demon? You know, like, it's a little sus. Racism horror is really hard. I just learned about Afro-surrealism that Jordan Peele likes to do, where the fact that it's insane is built into the plot. I don't know if I want another racism horror focused on a white actor throwing a slur. Oh, for sure. No, I feel like we as a society have far progressed from movies needing to have white people dropping the hard R or using kind of slurs in general. Like, it's not that there's like, it's like a hard no for me all the time. But at the same time, it's just like, I've seen so many examples of movies that are able to depict racism, homophobia, transphobia in a really authentic and realistic feeling way that doesn't resort to using slurs or depicting like graphic hate crimes. That's just my personal feeling on it. I know some people are just like, oh, but it's like about the history, it's about being historically accurate, and it's about being like genuine and authentic. And I'm just saying that like you can do that without being like a little bit too eager to write that in Final Draft Pro, you know? I think I like when a Black director does it because they usually find a way to do it without having to literally put the audience through race trauma. Right, because they'll use something as like a surrogate for racism. Like, it's not going to, like the villain isn't going to be like a slave master. It's going to be something that can like parallel institutionalized racism, and be like you notice that there are more metaphors being used that where like the I guess my thing is like, you can tell when a movie about racism is being made for white people and when it's being made for people of color, if that makes any sense. because I feel like an audience of people of color are able to pick up on subtlety when it comes to depicting racism. Like I don't need to like have the C word thrown at me to know that this person's anti-Asian. You know, like I can like suss out the microaggression. On top of the fact, like I don't get called the C word on the daily, but these like directors really think that like racists are throwing out slurs in my face all the time. It's like, no, they're doing it in private, and it's not fun, and they're also just keeping me from being able to do my job. But that's a whole other discussion. But because of that, it's hard for me to rate the real villain as racism. I don't know if I should just throw it in now and then like figure it out later. I think I'm like I'm traipsing the line between the depends, but then boring. I do feel like a lot of people saw Get Out and thought that they could make their own thing, but then like missed the point of like why Get Out was like really subversive when it comes to, well, one, a horror movie about racism, but two, a film about racism that does it in like a different way that isn't like exclusively about like slavery, because it's just like, surprise surprise, like the history of racism goes deeper than just like slavery. I mean, it's a big part of it. it's a big part of the issue, but it's, you know, it makes it seem that like when you're fixating on this like specific aspect of like Black trauma, and I'm hoping I'm not coming off as like somebody who's trying to speak like on behalf or like over Black voices, obviously. Like I'm not going to say that this is the definite perspective, or this is I as an Asian as an Asian man am like allowed to speak on behalf of like the Black community, because that'd be super cringe. But I just feel like I worry that when there is such an emphasis on slave movies, like as an industry, well, one, it's literally that's quite literally profiting off of Black trauma, but two, it feels like it really waters down the Black experience in this country to something that that like happened a long time ago, but it's like effects branch out, you know, into the present day, but you're not acknowledging those branches. You're only looking at like this specific part of it when it's like it's a whole other thing that like turns and like sort of reinvented itself over and over and over again. I don't know, it just feels like a very surface level read of institutionalized racism. Is that fair for me to say? Again, I'm hoping I'm not sounding like I'm trying to like Asian-splain something. I say that either way is a big swing. I put money on depends because it depends if it's boring. That's fair. I feel like that's a safe answer. Because like I don't want to say like boo, like you know, this thing is like boring, because I feel like out of context it's just like it's like, oh, you're tired of, you know, movies about racism, like what do you mean? And it's like, oh, okay, well, that could be kind of hard to do in like a twit longer, but I mean, nobody's like actually gonna like attack me on it, obviously, but I don't know. This is it's a difficult one. Okay, I wrote it down sort of thinking like this could be like a fun little debate for chat, but then it just turned into me like arguing with myself like a little bit, and like sort of, I don't know. It's weird. I mean, it's fun. I'm enjoying this so far, but like it is a lot. But yeah, it is very complex. I also, okay, so the real villain is misogyny. You know, we're gonna put all of like the real villain ones like like together. So the real villain is misogyny and the real villain is capitalism. I did want to put the real villain was like queerphobia, but I haven't seen enough personally for me to feel like it's like a, or at least ones that are explicitly about queerphobia. Like there's some where like the messages are so broad when it's about covering marginalized groups that like you can project a queer narrative onto it, but I feel like that's very different than like the main characters are queer and they're being hunted because they're queer, and the horrors that they go through over like the course of the story are going to be related to the queer experience. I haven't seen a lot of them. I know that they're there. Again, this is another thing. Like, I recognize, because of the expanse of like the internet and people being able to make their own movies now, and there being so many more routes to sort of uncover gems, you know, like that like there are probably plenty that exist. They're just not ones that I've been exposed to enough to like really get a grasp on the trope. I'm hoping that disclaimer kind of makes sense. But I did think about it quite a bit. I did sort of wonder if it was worth putting it on there. But the real villain's misogyny, I think that's another one that depends. I think I generally am okay with it, because I've seen some really good ones where it is like about misogyny. But I think the reason why I'm a little bit, I get like a little bit tense around movies that are like the real villain is misogyny is there's a couple of reasons. One, there is sort of it does run the risk of non-intersectional white feminism, where like it's like a really like it's a one size fits all commentary on feminism, and that's like, and it that ends up excluding like lots of groups. Obviously, it excludes people of like women of color, especially Black women. It like excludes people with disabilities. It excludes queer women a lot of the time, and like when it does have a queer woman, they always cast like a white person. So I think it's like one that really depends, because like on top of all of that, I feel like a common thread for like a lot of these, not all of them, I think it is getting better, but it seems like there's like an overlap with exploitation films, and I personally don't love that. I don't like ones where like assault and harassment are sort of used as as flagrantly as they end up being, because I don't know, it just, I know it's supposed to make you uncomfortable, but I don't know that it makes me like a sensible kind of uncomfortable. It just kind of it just kind of makes me feel not great, and it's not a fun as somebody who's experienced like assault, like I don't, it's why I stay away from anything that like is remotely related to that if I know that it's going to be triggering. So I'm gonna also put this one in depends. It is leaning a little bit more towards positive, so I guess I'll put it closer to the top. But I think, again, like the thing with like social issue based horror is that it can either be really, really good, really, really bad in a good way, or really, really bad in like a who let this be made kind of way. Did you get to the Indian burial ground trope? No, I haven't gotten to it yet. Actually, I do have it though. Like it is like on the row. Hey, I'm gonna try to catch up because I just realized I was ignoring chat on my soapbox. It gets weird with harsher ones on race and misogyny because it enters the yeah, basically. I struggle with real villain is because they sometimes water down or fixate on a specific experience, and sometimes goes too far. As in, they end up saying this story is the experience of misogyny, which is why I'm anxious about going to see Men. Okay, we have to talk about Men at some point, my dude. Personally, I'm kind of like, I know what happens in it. I have not watched it. I was pretty interested in watching it because I'm an Alex Garland stan. But like as somebody who's like not so much like a horror stan, which you wouldn't be able to tell for me putting together a list of like 134 tropes like together. But like I don't consider myself like a super horror stan. I like thrillers, which is why I've liked his stuff in the past, but this is like more of like a straight, I mean, I guess Annihilation was like straight up horror. But yeah, I don't know. I was just like, I'm a little antsy about seeing it too. But to my knowledge, it's not nearly as like ham-fisted as some people were like saying it was based on the title. I think it ends up like being the mess without spoilers. The message is pretty straightforward, and you kind of just like, and it's about a specific thing, to where it's like it not leaving room for other elements of the discussion isn't going to be inherently, it's not going to feel like it's excluding a group. I don't know if that makes any sense. Because for me, there are some films that exist so much in a space that like is devoid of certain things, that I wouldn't say like I can almost excuse it not being brought up, but like I just don't notice it as much. I'm not sure how I would feel that way with Men, with it like not having the added elements of like other issues being brought up to it because of how hyper specific this specific experience is. I know that that's a very redundant sentence, hyper specific, but yeah. But if you watch it though, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Long story short, real villain is capitalism. Okay, so okay, so the reason I'm gonna put it in good is because it's rarely done in like a way that I'm just like, oh wow, that was so powerful. It's like almost always in a way that feels like very corny, but I kind of like the corniness of it. But yes, the real villain is also capitalism. Real villain is technology. I think, okay, to be honest, it can get kind of boomery in my opinion. I do like tech thrillers, but when it comes to tech horror, I mean, I feel like there's like kind of very few routes you can go. My accent just changed. Hello. Very few routes you can go with it. I mean, I guess Black Mirror has sort of like shifted that feeling for me though. But like that, I don't know. That's like when I think like the real villain is like technology or whatever. Like I'm kind of thinking like robots, but like I think living in the digital age though, I feel like it's the tech horrors that you'll be watching now tend to be a little bit more about like surveillance states and social media and so I don't know. I think sometimes that can be interesting. Maybe is my opinion changing? Maybe it is and depends, but like it's thin ice because it can end up being it can end up really missing the mark on like genuine commentary on some of these issues. Because like honestly, if there's like for example, if there's a horror thing that's like about social media, for example, and it's only resolution by the only conclusion it makes is like, bestie, log off, social media is bad, we should all know less about each other. It's just like I agree with some of it, but it neglects like the nuances of the discussion around like, okay, but it is important for people to be able to connect. This is for a lot of people who are queer, the internet is and social media is like a very important aspect of discovering yourselves and accepting yourselves and learning more about your community and more about just like your ancestors in a way, like your queer ancestors. So I don't know, it's like it's a slippery slope. Long story short, it's like TLDR, it's a slippery slope. Black Mirror does the villainous society and the villainous technology. I don't know, I gotta rewatch iRobot. I don't remember really liking that, like iRobot. I wouldn't be able to give you a good reason why though, which is why I'm not a film critic. Okay, so this one I think is a little bit more juicy though. Okay, so the killer is a friend or relative. So I mean this like more in like the reveal is like, oh, you thought you could trust this person the entire time, but like you couldn't. I personally love this. I love betrayal. I love drama. I especially love it if you think the friend was dead this entire time, but they're actually alive and they faked their death so they can continue killing people. I'm kind of a fan. Um, honestly, okay, controversial opinion. Are we judging me yet? I think we're judging me. T, it's a who, right? Like I don't know. I love betrayal in stories. I think betrayal is like inherently great drama. Um, but especially when it's like everybody's killing everybody, I think it's great. It's why I love Scream. But um, killer is ancient evil or from a folktale. Okay, so I'm really guilty of I like folk horror quite a bit. I know folk horror isn't always about folktales, and like the killer in it or the antagonist isn't always going to be like folkloric. Um, but I personally I mean I'm personally a fan. I like ancient evils. I think it is. Here's the thing. I as like a writer, I know that I shouldn't because typically with ancient evils, it becomes like a it's evil for the sake of being evil. But I feel like in horror, I kind of like when an entity is like so unknowable and like we don't really understand what's going on in its head. It's sort of like one of the few times I will accept like, oh, this character's evil for the sake of being evil, and I wouldn't consider it lazy writing. Um, my only issue that I have to bring up though is in like a lot of folk horror and like a lot of I mean I think the I think a potential misstep, if you will, for this type of movie is and I have this down like the list as well, but like it does run into some cultural appropriation territory, and it can also be rooted in, especially with like the folk horror. A lot of it is like deeply rooted in the ostracization of pagans and like the oppressions of them from like Christians that tried to make these like, oh my god, these weird religions, like they're bad, they're demonic, and we sort of feel the echoes of that in like certain types of folk horror. So like I do recognize that like it can be kind of problematic, but I personally like it. But I'm acknowledging all of those things. I'm basically acknowledging that I'm part of the problem. I'm always part of the problem. I want an excuse to find my serial killer sister. Let's go. I know I was taking care of you to protect you from the villain, but now that I know you're the villain, I can take it out on you definitely 100%. Folklore is so racially biased, but I love ancient evil. Facts. Facts. Okay, mysterious illness and plague. Okay, I don't like... It's a little bit too close to home now. I think like it sometimes it can be kind of like interesting, but like right now I'm not in the mood to. I know that's unfair to like these movies that have been here like forever, and I think sometimes pandemic fiction can be fun, but like right now I'm just kind of like I don't need to watch this hypothetical scenario because everything that's happening in it is like happening right now. Like people are lying about their zombie bites, people are like refusing to get the vaccine. Like I'm good. I just need to turn on the news and like I'll see it. So like I wouldn't say it's trash because there's nothing inherently wrong with it. And a lot of the times like pandemic films aren't even like about like actual illnesses or like diseases. It's like usually a it's usually like a sign of like great social change or something. It's usually a surrogate for like another type of story. It's rarely about like an actual disease. But you know, maybe in 10 years I will be able to enjoy pandemic fiction again. But when I'm reading pandemic nonfiction, we have a problem. No 9/11 horror yet, so no pandemic horror either, please. Oh my god, 9/11 horror. Oh, don't even get me fucking started. I just keep thinking of that like movie with Robert Pattinson where like the plot twist at like the very end is that like it like slowly zooms out from his like office and he's like in the World Trade Center and the calendar says it's like 9/11. It was so stupid. It was so bad. I know that's not technically related to what we were talking about because that's not a horror film. It was like a romance. Which is like, by the way, is a really shitty way to sort of like leave a romantic film, but a romantic drama. Yeah, it's unhinged. It's a lot. Um, okay, so home invasion. So a little bit of background for me. I hate home invasion. Home invasion is literally my greatest fear. Um, which is why I love watching it in movies. From like the safety of like a screen, I love it. I am desensitizing myself to the horrors of my house being broken into, um, and me getting slowly like stabbed to death. I don't know, not stabbed to death, like, or slowly, but I bleed out slowly maybe. Home Invasion has gotten pretty generic, but it's fun as a thriller. Okay, I'm willing to concede that like it does sort of it when it crosses genres, there is like sort of like a differing sort of thing to it. I feel like Home Invasion is just so broad, as like a plot device, that like when we look at like a home invasion as like a genre or like a subgenre, I guess, kind of more realistically, then it's like it does sort of become a little bit more like not potato potato. I don't know why my brain is mixing up food metaphors so bad, but I personally like it. Inject it into my bloodstream. Yeah, sometimes home invasion is just its own overlapping genre. Nothing like a black woman's house being invaded and she has to beat the crap out of a killer for making that mistake. Scream to Home Alone. um, I mean, like, Home Alone is like straight up a horror movie though, right? Okay, evil children, throw them away. Throw them away. I hate evil children. They're like not fun. And it's like I acknowledge the history of them as a staple in horror, but also fuck that. Fuck them. Fuck them in their stupid fucking faces. I don't know. And with the laugh track. Yeah, no, evil children can like can go away. I feel like the thing with evil children in like horror movies is like when I find out when the credits go by and then like I see that the actor has the same last name of the director, I'm just like, bitch, bitch, come on. There are good child actors that could have like pulled this off, and you're like decided to be a nepotism baby, bitch. Evil children is terrifying conceptually, but children in film are uniquely unlikable. Facts. Oh, unkillable. Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna stick with unlikable. That's my Freudian slip. I think children are unlikable. I'm just kidding. But yeah, they do tend to. It does limit the kinds of things you can do because it's just like, well, we can't show this child being chopped up as like a villain. Um, so then it's just like, okay, well, like, what are you allowed to do then? All right, I'm gonna put the Midsommars next to each other. Toxic relationships and cults. Um, I think it kind of depends on like the level of toxic of like the relationship, and then like what the final conclusion of it is. Because like on one hand, I can be down for a good for her um ending where like she gets like her revenge on this dude, and it can be like a really cathartic experience for people in like the movie theater who are like after reliving trauma throughout this movie of like this main character getting gaslit the entire time, to just like have them feel like vindicated in like the ending. But then it kind of comes down to like, okay, well, like, what level of toxicity are we talking? Like abuse, or are we talking about somebody? Well, I mean, I guess emotional abuse is like is bad. I should let me. I don't want to make it seem like there's like a tiered list of like which is like worse, emotional abuse or physical abuse. But I'm not gonna pretend that I'm not more comfortable seeing one on screen more than the other. Does that make sense? It's so weird having my empathy towards children tested so harshly in horror. Oh my god. So I don't know. I think to be honest, I think I generally okay. So I'm gonna put it in good because generally the film doesn't reward the toxic partner. Usually they die. And if you've been in a really, really bad relationship and you get to like project your insecurities about this person onto a fictional character, that does kind of hit different. I know that sounds maybe a little bit psychotic, but we all kind of do it with movies a bit. There is like a little bit of wish fulfillment. Like obviously you wouldn't actually wish death on this person, or maybe you do because maybe fuck that guy. But I wouldn't say that I've ever been that far to that extent. But and then cults, I love cults. Cults go all the way to the top. I love cult films. I love cult horror. I think it's just so it's really to me it's like really fascinating. I sound like such a true crime girly when I say that, but like I don't know, there's something like really it kind of forces you to have a very magnetic villain. Because like if you're gonna convincingly have this person who's heading this like group of people who are completely in awe and under utter control of this like person, like they have to have like a very strong charisma to them but also be incredibly narcissistic, and I feel like that's like a really fun opportunity as a writer to like play around with character study. So that's personally why I love it. So cults get to go all the way to the top for me. Witch's curse. I feel like the witch's curse can be like used in so many different ways. But I'm look, I'm a witchy girl, okay? I'm a hex girl. So I love witches' curses. I know it's not like a horror movie, but I'm just thinking of like the in Hocus Pocus when like the guy's turned into a cat and he has to live for like hundreds of years. And his like sister is like dead. Oh, that would suck. Um, as much as it would fulfill my dreams of being a cat boy. I'm just kidding. Don't quote that. Witch's curse is strange. It's never really the villain as much as it's the catalyst. Yeah, no, when I was like organizing these, it kind of crosses the line between villain and then like sort of the inciting incident. But I just decided that Witch's curse was gonna kind of be like around here. Wronged person enacts revenge. I think it can kind of go either way. I think if you can sort of generally separate yourself from the narrative of like the what you could argue has like real world parallels to it, that would make this type of film problematic, and look at it more of like through like a purely fictional lens. Like I'm mostly talking about Carrie. I'm just gonna say Carrie. It's hard for me to like make this like put this anything lower than good, because of how much I love Carrie. But like I do recognize that like the kid who snaps after like being bullied and goes on like a rampage, like it does have not great real world like implications, but it's one of those things where like in like a film or like in a fictional story where it's like done in such like a hyper characterized way, it distances from it in that sense, so it becomes like less of a cautionary tale about um like a real world issue that's like very dark, and more of like it can be kind of like simpler and be like about bullying and being about being misunderstood. So for me it's hard for me to put it any lower than good, but I totally and completely understand people who think that this could be problematic. um But that's just me. I also feel like it does have overlap with Killer is Just Misunderstood. So maybe that's why I like it too. Why I like put them together. I just think of that Vanessa Hudgens Beauty and the Beast movie. Oh, Beastly? Oh my god. Beastly was a lot. That fucking movie. Okay, but like I'll be honest though. If we're talking about the same movie, um if you haven't listened to Broken Arrow by Pixie Lott, that was like sort of ended up being associated with that movie, it is a serve. It is a bop. I love Broken Arrow. That is like my favorite Pixie Lott song. And I'm pretty sure it was associated with that movie, which is like very odd because it really doesn't have that much to do with it plot wise. Because to my knowledge, I don't remember it having that much of like a love triangle narrative to it. Okay, so I'm a liar and thought that I was going to be better about taking a mini break, but my gamer bladder is reminding me to take a break. So we're gonna take 5 very quickly. Grab a snack, refill your water, use the restroom, do whatever. I will be right back. All right, I'm gonna give it a second, but I've returned. We're actually making decent headway on this. It might not look like it because we have like all of this to go through, but I feel like we're making good time. I was really scared this was gonna be like a 3 hour stream or something, but I might have just been a little bit dramatic. All right, I don't know if RJ is still in here, but I do have it. I do have it on this list. But the trope of the quote unquote Indian burial ground, I I I feel like it goes without saying. This is going in this is going in actually problematic. Like, I mean, just the name of it is problematic. That's not how we refer to indigenous populations. um I mean, like, kind of anything that mystifies like native cultures in like sort of that way and sort of disrespects the spirituality that a lot of these cultures have by making like a haunted house story off of it. I don't know. It's I mean, I do know. I think it's cringe. I imagine most people think it's cringe now if they just like see the name of it, um but I don't know. It's just like I it's like I don't enjoy it. I think building it like it's like setting something like on a burial ground, like like unmarked graves or whatever, and that's how you want to do haunted. I'm just like, okay, fine, cool, that's great. But like when you specifically slant it to like an indigenous culture, I'm just like, that feels kind of racist. I'm not gonna lie. I would rather this movie be set on top of a burned down orphanage of racially unspecific children that all died in a fire and now they're unbaptized souls, I guess, I don't fucking know, are able to cross the other side and they're pissed, so they just like throw shit everywhere, and like that's your movie. I will take that gladly over like being like cringe. There's always a point where a kind of horror is dated because it's so specifically cruel. Absolutely. Period. It's like whenever I hear it, like I do cringe. Excuse me, I have like a little thing in my throat. All right, so I'm also okay, so there are two killers. So I think I'm not going to limit the number with this. Like, I think like multiple killers is probably like a better descriptor, but it's in like the same realm of like the killer is a friend or relative for me. Like, I do find it a bit juicy. Like sometimes these like reveals are like really lame and like you called it from like a mile away, but like sometimes it's fun to like be able to say that you called it from a mile away. Like, I mean, like, yes, sometimes predictable plots are like, you know, literally boring and like you're tired but all the way through it because you think like you know that the writer thinks they're being slick, but like the breadcrumbs are like really right there. But like I don't need a mind-blowing plot twist to like be entertaining, you know? Like it could be like an okay plot twist, and like if the rest of the movie is fun and it adds stakes to the final act of the film, like to me that gets the job done. I enjoy it. But I also feel like I'm really easy to entertain. I don't know if anybody else sort of feels that way when they watch movies, or it's just like you can know that this movie like isn't great, but like did you still have fun watching it? Yeah, it's like okay, fine. Then like I guess I don't hate it, hate it. All right, axe slash chainsaw murderer. Um, I think it's like so it's skirting the line between kind of boring because it's like so overused, um, but also just like I get that it's a horror staple, you know? Like it is a classic. I think it's like it's not my fave, but I get the appeal. I think it like does have elements of boring in it, but at the same time, like I do think there is sort of like, I mean, there's a reason why people gravitate towards certain archetypes, and I feel like if like you have a model of like a story that's been done so many times, it leaves room for things to be subversive, you know? Like for example, I think of when I think of the poster for X, right? Like that horror movie where like she's like holding an axe or whatever. It's just like it's flipping the hunted becomes like the hunter story, you know? Or at least that's how I feel. Like it like it's sort of using that like blueprint of just like, oh well, like in another film it's these kids are like terrorizing this like old couple and like kill them, but like in this movie it's like the old couple's like evil, also these kids uh, are making an adult film and they're not, we should specify that they are not children, they are legally adults. Maybe basic is a better word than classic. Okay, well, my boyfriend literally called me basic this like past week, so I don't want to talk about it. That word is banned from my chat. Yeah, it all feels like commentary on that very first Axe Chainsaw movie, kind of cult classic energy. Right, like yeah, totally. To me that's where like I can kind of get the vibe from it. I feel like with in like a movie where like they're the main killer, it's like I don't know why you can kind of just really sense a love for like the genre in those types of films. I don't know if you feel that way too, or if anybody else feels that way. It's just when you're like acknowledging horror staples in that way, but like in like a very sincere way. Like it's not trying to be like meta commentary or anything. It's just sort of like, but it's like not exactly an homage. I don't know. There's something kind of charming about that a little bit. I like when people love what they're making, and it feels like a lot of like as much as I personally don't love axe slash chainsaw killers because I don't love gore, like I feel like they had fun making it usually. I kind of agree. Yeah. Okay, body horror, throw it away. Throw her away. I hate body horror. It's so gross. I love I have respect for body horror when it like has really good practical effects. Um but if it's like all really bad CG just to be gross as opposed to like somebody worked really hard on this prosthetic makeup just to be gross, then it's like different, but I still hate it either way. I don't like body horror. Um I like thematically what body horror talks about though. And I feel like body horror can end up being like kind of a, you could extend it to be sort of a broad umbrella term because like I mean because the body horror that I think of when somebody like talks to me about it, like I don't know why I think of like Uzumaki first, and like I have a love-hate relationship with that, but it's mostly hate where it's just like sort of like gross and like not really my vibe, but it can be sort of like it can extend itself out to like other things, and it can also still talk about topics that I think are important to address in film, like thematically. Like I definitely a lot of them end up being like talking about like puberty or like body image or eating disorders, and it can be like, and just I'm generally I feel like a really common one is just aging, but I don't know, it's like I understand it, I don't love it, but it's like not enough for me to say I get the appeal because I really don't. Body horror enters monkey's paw slash uzumaki. Body horror is very either you specifically like aesthetic of it or you don't. Basically, yeah. That's why I didn't really love aspects of Annihilation either. I don't know that I'd call Annihilation body horror though. I think it has elements of it though. Is that fair to say? I don't know if you've watched Annihilation, but okay. And the exorcism. Okay, I love a good exorcism. I feel like they can be so goofy. and like you can tell that the person's like there could be like really good exorcism performances, but I specifically love the ones that are cartoonishly bad. Um, because like I just like to imagine what the stage direction was for like that shot to like get that draw out that specific performance. That's like for me that's next level. I love it. I did. It's one of the rare Natalie Portman movies I didn't hate. I absolutely watched it for inspiration for a comic. It's good. I mean, it's fucked, but but yes, I love a good exorcism. I don't love the. I mean, obviously, I don't love like Christian propaganda, and I don't love how like exorcisms like historically have been used to like persecute like gay people, trans, kind of just queer people in general, women, mentally ill people. Like obviously, you know, the real life counterparts of like exorcisms can like go to jail, but like film exorcisms that are like very goofy, I'm into it. I love it. Even if it can overlap into body horror sometimes. I just think of like the oh my god, this image just like fucking pukes everywhere. It's so gross. I hate it. But like I also love how like weird it is. Okay, so a murder mystery um like crossover, like cross genre, I is also my shit. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. I love a good murder mystery. So if you throw like horror or thriller elements or both over it, that's my shit. Also, I did not realize that this this song had a like a little vocal sample over it, so I'm just like, who the fuck is talking to me? Ooh, okay, I don't like that, but we're gonna move on. Murder mystery is fun, but it might not last past the first watch. That's fair. I like rewatching some murder mysteries, but I understand just because I like to see how well a writer and a director have hidden the clues, but yeah, like it does get old. Or it has a very it's very likely to be like not fun for like a return watch. But I grew up on murder mysteries though. Like those were like the books that I would read. Or just kind of mysteries in general. I mean, I was a Nancy Drew kid. Obviously not every Nancy Drew was a murder mystery, but I was that kid. So like that's my bias. I don't know. I love elements of mystery because they enter my favorite genre, surrealism. I love surrealism. Okay, supernatural pregnancy. Okay, so no, I'll put it in depends because I don't know that I fully see the appeal. Um, I think it's very specific, and I mostly say it's specific because I like Rosemary's Baby. Even though it has lots of things in it that I said that I like, that I hate, specifically like assault, and then it's like sort of the nightmare of like being forced to like, bring a demonic child to like like I like pregnancy in like horror movies is like kind of a lot to me because I already just like feel not weird like around pregnancy, but like it is sort of like it's like both a fascinating and like very weird thing to wrap your head around, like how like pregnancies like happen. So for me, I'm just kind of like it can either be like really interesting or be kind of gross. But I think in like within like a horror context, it's like almost always like just a nightmare. Um, but sometimes there's a good commentary that comes out of it. So I don't know. I think it's in depends. My baby is the Antichrist. I mean, literally though. The ones I don't love are like, I talked about it earlier, but like Mpreg. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. No, I do not want to see what, where that baby comes out. I don't want to have to imagine what, what hole it has to come out of. All right, human sacrifice. Human sacrifice is fine. It's just fine. I don't have any ill will towards it. It's like a pretty standard plot device, I feel like. It kind of depends on like when it happens, I guess, but if it opens with a human sacrifice, then like it makes the film already feel very campy, which is kind of my vibe when it comes to horror, but then, you know, then there's like also it kind of can be tied back to like here's the thing. If there's like indigenous cultures being stereotyped in like the imagery around it, then like, yeah, no, I'm not loving the human sacrifice. But if it's just like Satanists or whatever, they're trying to like resurrect like their leader, and it's like a cult kind of situation, then I am kind of like into it a bit. Like, not into it as in like it does something for me that way, but like you know what I mean. It's like, okay, that's a vibe. Take a shot every time Sean says that's a vibe. Human sacrifice is just glued to horror. When I think of it though, I just think of Lord of the Flies. Oh my god. When was that makes me feel old thinking about the last time I had to read it. So we're not going to talk about it. Killer tells menacing jokes. I'm going to be honest. I don't really like villains that talk. I don't like killers that talk that much. I kind of like an unknowable horror personally. Unless there's drama, obviously, where it's like one of the friends. But I think for the most part, I like when a killer doesn't really talk and they just get to be this menacing figure. So when it's like somebody that's like cracking jokes that like are usually not meant to be funny, they're just supposed to be sort of like oh god, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess I have to say antagonizing, but like I just said antagonist in the same sentence, so that feels kind of goofy. But like if it's just like antagonizing somebody, I don't know, it's if it's just harassing them, it's kind of just, it's a little bit of like a nails to a chalkboard kind of effect to me. So I personally don't, you know what, I'm not even gonna put it in boring, I'm gonna put it in trash. I don't think it's good. I don't like this trope. I don't like it one bit. I wish 50 Shades was redirected as a horror movie. Isn't killer telling menacing jokes just creepy guy hitting on me at a bar might murder me? I think that's why it's like not. I think that's why I'm staying away from it though. I think that's maybe that's like the root of my aversion to this trope, and it's not just the actor kind of trying to like overdo like a Freddy Krueger impression. Killer can only be stopped on a full moon. I think it's fine. My thing with it is like, well, one, you can like tie it to like the human sacrifice thing, but I think it adds stakes and like a time limit to a plot, which for me I'm always cool with. I like when there's sort of a sense of urgency. I feel like that's not like I don't think that's a hot take. I feel like that's a pretty cold take, that like in a movie that's supposed to keep you on like the edge of your seats, that there's like a sense of urgency to it. Hello. I don't think this is a stunning and brave thing for me to say, that like I want my horror movie to keep me excited, but whatever. So, but it's not like it's like blowing it out of the water for me though. I just think it's can be like a nice added element. It also adds like a little bit of like an occult flair to it, which I enjoy. I'm a very occult kind of person when it comes to my shit, even though you can historically trace it back again to villainizing paganism or just cultures that aren't Christianity. But we're gonna ignore that because we get to have fun. Summer camps. Okay, so I hated summer camp, which is why I'm glad it's almost universally represented as like bad. I don't have much more to say past that. I think it's such an iconic setting. I don't love my only thing is like if it like focuses a lot like on like teen sex, then like that's kind of like that's not really my vibe. But it's it's such a staple of the genre. Plus, it's like I feel like summer camp is like a great sort of narrative setting to put a bunch of characters that normally wouldn't interact with each other together of like different backgrounds, because like all the camp counselors can like have totally different personalities. The people at the camp are there for like different reasons. Some of them want to be there, some of them get paid to be there all the time, some people like hate going to summer camp, so me. It's like there's so many routes you can take for a summer camp setting, plot wise and like character dynamic wise, that I personally love it. um would I say inject it into my bloodstream? No, but it is up there, so that's why I'm going to leave it in iconic. I think there's a few timeless horrors based on summer camps. There's quite a few, to be honest. I feel like it's such a class, like it's a such a recognizable setting. But then like everybody's gonna have like a different. When people are asked like, oh, what do you think is like an iconic summer camp film, everybody's gonna say something different because that's just how much it's used. I think there's gonna be like a common one that a lot of people say, but it's interesting to see sort of like with 80s nostalgia revivals that happen literally every 5 years at this point. Like we see a resurgence in like sort of Gen Z and younger millennial interest in like this sort of genre or subgenre, I guess, and this is just the general aesthetic, you know. So I'm kind of surprised Stranger Things hasn't done summer camp yet. Of Dirty Dancing, truly horrifying. Okay, so fraternity or sorority? Um, I think it's iconic personally, but like it is like I will put it in depends though, because it's such thin ice for like lots of like very problematic shit that can happen in it, because like it can either just be really pervy, there can be casual homophobia in it, there's like a lot of casual sexism a lot of the times, and like I understand a lot of the times it's like sort of picking apart fraternity and sorority culture, but it's like I still don't want to have to like watch it. But like at the same time, it is a fun setting and I love Scream Queens. We deserved a season 3 and a better season 2, but that's beside the point. Oh god, for utter sort, I hate it. It hits all the worst elements of the villainous homophobia, misogyny, capitalism, racism. It's a lot. That's fair. No, I agree with you on that. It like almost makes me want to root for the killer all of the time. Again, it's like another narrative excuse to put a bunch of people together. Um, that wouldn't normally hang out with each other, which I know sounds weird when it's like a fraternity or sorority. Or like imagine them being like very uniform, but hear me out. It's like pledges that are like rushing a fraternity or sorority, and like they're all different. A lot of them are losers. It means like the main character gets to be like a quirky. They're such a quirky nerd, but then like they're just like super conventionally attractive, and the only thing that makes them like uncool is like they wear glasses and they're like a little bit shy. And then it just crosses over into a different genre of movie entirely. Um, and then overall, it kind of becomes an excuse to slut shame, which I don't think is great. But horror films have such an unlikable protagonist sometimes. It definitely makes me happy to see them killed. Ooh, okay, so that's like another one that like I have. Down the line, which is that I mean, yeah, it's right here. Everybody dies. So there is no final girl. There are no survivors. Everybody just dies. Um, I think it depends, but I think I generally don't like everybody dies. Um, you have to have like a really strong statement behind it to go with everybody dies. Because personally, I know this is really basic, but I'm gonna say it. I think the final girl is so iconic that I can't put it anywhere lower than inject it into my bloodstream. I think it's such a classic trope. But like it's also a fun trope. It lets you. It's inspired so much main character energy that like I aspire to, which is just to be completely plain and boring, but like have a good heart. I basically center my entire personality around it. I'm afraid to like them too much or else we get Scream 11. Okay, we don't have to talk about the plethora of Scream sequels. All right, this is a safe space for people like me who are who feel physically harmed by any Scream iteration, but then have ended up kind of coming around to certain ones. Okay, popular girl dies first. Honestly, boring. It's boring. It's so overdone. I can't even say it in like it's like a classical way. It's also again feels like an excuse to slut shame somebody. I don't think that's great. Cultural appropriation. Like actually no, I won't even put this in boring. I'll put it in trash. And then oh, did I just lose another one or am I okay, no I did. So cultural appropriation. So basically using imagery or creatures from other cultures in like a way to create horror, but you're 100% just like stealing from somebody and bastardizing somebody's own culture. I think that's cringe. Not only is that cringe, it's like problematic. So it gets to go there. Person of color dies first. You can guess how I feel from the swiftness that I pulled that into actually problematic. Um, Same thing with with queer character dies first. Stoner dies first. I'm kind of indifferent to because like on one hand, like yes, it stems from like a very negative element of straight edge culture in like sort of the dare era of anti-drug PSAs that we as we all know were deeply rooted in racism, homophobia and transphobia. Um but at the same time, the stoners were usually the most annoying supporting character in the main cast, so when they die, I usually don't care. So I won't say it's trash, but I'll say it's boring. Honestly, it's like who cares if you do drugs? It's like 2022. We don't need this. We don't need this symbolism here. Those three are pretty empty tropes so far. Yeah, basically. What about Frat Rush interrupted by the killer opening? I've encountered that a ton. Yeah, so I have sort of like an umbrella one for that. That's like film opens with a murder. But yeah, no, that's definitely a common one. I would sort of just kind of like tie that to like sort of the fraternity or sorority subset in general. Fisherman dies first. Um I kind of like the sort of like Mariner's Tale esque like aspect to it, but it does limit the amount of like killers you can have. If that makes any sense. I don't know. Like on one hand, it's just like it does play up like the urban legend aspects of like maybe a killer story, which is kind of fun. So but like at the same time it's like sort of opening a story with like a character that we don't really have much stakes in, that's like usually just there for exposition or just to sort of be literally be fish bait. I don't know. It's a little boring. Same thing with athlete dies first. It's like it's fine, it's not trash, but it's kind of like because I don't know, I don't really feel like there's like much of a slant past it um that isn't somehow related to like the writer or director projecting their high school like drama into a plot by like making like the jocks not only dumb but like easily killable. Okay, Bigot dies first though. Okay, I know we said we weren't I know we said we weren't on board with like the real villain is like racism and like sort of heavy-handed stuff like that. But like I do it also like it does set the killer up in like a little bit more of a sympathetic lens than like you probably want to as a writer. But like personally I love when like a really terrible person dies like in the first act, especially when they're bigoted. So I'm cool with it. I'm chill. I'm chill with the bigot dying first. Journalist or reporter dies first. Um, I think it's on the lower scale of depends. I think it's kind of similar to Fisherman dies first, um, but I feel like a positive thing that this does though is like it feels like it can be exposition that doesn't feel as boring as like a fisherman talking about like a sea tale or something. Oh, that reminds me, I forgot to put sea monster as like um or sea monster or sea creature as like one of the villains. There's a lot of these things that like I've completely forgotten and glossed over. Wow, your true colors are showing. Listen, all right? Like it's all fantasy, it's fiction, it's fine. I'm not telling you to go out and punch a Nazi because I can't do that on this platform because that would be bad. But I wouldn't do it anyway because I'm a good person who would never incite violence based on ideologies. Best friend sacrifices themselves. This is like, I mean, I love the melodrama that comes out of the best friend sacrificing themselves, especially if there's like a cute eulogy at like the end of like the movie. Um, I feel bad if it's a character that I really like. Oh my god, Fear Street. Oh, Fear Street was so. It was like the first one was good, but like that the one of the best friends like this is kind of a spoiler, but this movie's been out for like over a year, so I don't feel that bad about saying it. But like her head goes through like a bread cutter at like a supermarket, and it's so gross. And like I felt like I couldn't even like focus on like how devastating it is that like the best friend dies in this like final scuffle, and like most of the film goes without like a main character dying. So it's like the last act where like people start dropping like flies. But this kill is just so gross and so visceral that like I can't even like take into consideration just like, oh, okay, so this is gonna be like a horror film that does kill off characters. Like, damn, okay. But yeah, I think I feel like it's like I don't want to say wholesome, obviously, because it's not, but like do I want to say it scratches that same itch? That feels like a really gross way to put it. I don't know. Pet dies, boo, boo. Let's stop killing pets, okay? I don't want to see any cute dead animals on stream. On stream, hello, on screen. I mean, yeah, I don't want to see them on stream either. Don't kill pets. I'm tired of this plot device. I remember reading like a um an essay or whatever about like um the usage of excuse me of killing animals, specifically dogs, in media, and that how far it kind of goes back in storytelling, but it was sort of within like um the frame of reference of Moonrise Kingdom when like the dog dies, and like how it's like sort of it shifts the tone of like the movie when it happens, because like up until this point it's just like, oh, it's like a bunch of kids just like running around and like running away from their problems and living this fantasy, and then like a dog dies and it's just like, okay, well now this movie is kind of kind of fucked. Okay, film opens with a murder. I think anything that's kind of remotely associated to like Scream is gonna be like up there. I feel like it's like you don't have to open every film with like a murder for it to be good, obviously, but like I love entering the film with an iconic death. But like it has to be really good to be like to sort of like pull you in, you know, and like understand the stakes. Because I think it's a good way to introduce sort of the severity of like of the threat that you're going to be facing in this movie. But it never crosses over into like, in my opinion, it doesn't cross over into like in media res territory where it's just like just start their story where it like starts, you know. But I don't know. I personally like it. I think it's a good tone setter. And like from that point on, I can like know is like, okay, is this going to be campy? Is this going to be like actually scary? Is like, you know, what am I in the mood for? That death made the blonde bob cut iconic. 100%. That is like where horror cinema peaked. I'm just kidding. But it is an iconic scene. I love it so much. I mean, I love the original Scream so much. It's so good. Character dies on the phone or while texting. Okay, so I know I said that anything associated with like Scream is like gonna get like high, but to be honest, I'm like annoyed when somebody dies on the phone or is like texting. I think it's boring. I don't like it. Because it usually just like involves like a character being stupid when they die. Like that's kind of like a lame death, to be honest. So I don't know. It's like it's whatever. Decapitation. So I chose these emojis because of Hereditary, obviously, but I don't want to say Decapitation is fine. I don't feel kind of one way or the other about it. Um, I think like some of them a lot of them being kind of unintentionally funny. I don't know if that's fucked up for me to say. Like I think some decapitations are handled better than others, but sometimes like that you want it to look bad because that's the tone you're going for. So I think this is gonna be another one where it's on like the lower end of depends. Death during or after love scene. Okay, so I'm just gonna say I'm gonna say fuck because I can. I couldn't say that on tier maker. I did like I was like I was scared of getting I was scared of getting yelled at. Okay, so I couldn't say sex. Um, but because I was reading the terms and conditions and I've never made one before. Okay, so I got nervous. Um, I'm I'm like indifferent to it, but I get the appeal. Like not necessarily like, you know, the H word appeal of it, but just kind of like it is a staple. It's just like not one that I ever really particularly cared for, especially if the characters are like supposed to be underage. But obviously they'd be like visibly, you know, 25-year-olds playing trying to play 17, 18-year olds, but um I don't know. And also, it ends up like again being like a tool to like slut shame as like a narrative theme, which I don't love. We're sex positive here, okay, besties. Okay, so really goofy Final Destination death. So I'll be honest, some of them are frustratingly stupid, but a lot of them are really iconic. Like I don't like Final Destination, but I do like how creative they can kind of get. I will say that clip that went around of like was it Halloween Kills or like what was like the second one in like the revival trilogy that they've been doing, where like I saw like a clip that a character oh my god, of course like you're one of the few non-white characters you have in your cast isn't even killed by the killer. She dies because she like I believe she fires like a gun like into like a car and like it like bounces off in like a weird way and like and kills her that way, and like that's how she dies. Was like some weird, like like some weird twist of fate. And it's just like, this is not a satisfying death to me. So those ones, like, I will say are like dumb, but like the ones that are like really creative, I think it can be kind of iconic. People will never be the same around logs. Girl, I live in a lumbering state. Okay, so I'm constantly behind those trucks and I'm always nervous about it. Main character is a nerd and a loser. It's it's fine. I don't really have any feelings about it one way or the other. I feel like it's kind of standard, but which is like it's so run of the mill, but it's like I'm not bored with it yet. I am bored with like really hot people playing characters that are supposed to be plain and like unattractive, and then the personality trait is just like not thinking that they're attractive. Like that's kind of annoying, but for the most part it's just like a character that's like sort of I do like an underdog. All right, we love it. We love a little bit of an underdog story. Andrew Garfield being a nerd will never be funny. Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought you meant. It's like never be not funny. Um, but I wanted to make sure first. But yeah, no, um I almost said that trilogy was so weird, but I'm just like, oh no, they didn't even get to make the third movie. It literally ends at like the worst possible place it could end, which is like Gwen dying. That model in glasses made me chuckle, literally though. It's so goofy. It's kind of endearing, but you know, I think if the main character complains about how plain they look all the time and is just like really sheepish and like, oh my god, nobody would ever like me, everybody overlooks me, then like that's annoying. In the same way that like, oh my god, if it's like a movie set in the 80s and like this kid is like a not if they're like a Dungeons and Dragons kid and it's like done in like a really cringe way, or like they're just like incredibly sexist, I'm like, that's kind of gross. But it reminds me of that game meme. Wait, which game meme? You have to be more specific because we have plenty. Because we're meme queens. Speaking of which, Scream Queens, iconic. Not just the TV series, but just the concept. We love a good scream. For me, that is like, I can already love an actress or actor, or I guess I should just say actor, like gender neutral in general, but I could like already love them. But if they have like a good ass scream, like blood curdling scream, then like I will literally be like their number one stan. Like honestly, I'm bummed that Sydney Sweeney isn't in more horror movies. I know she's in a couple, but like when she like screams on stage and like the finale of Euphoria, when like she sees the play version of herself on the carousel, and she just like screeches the most like terrifying shriek. I'm just like, this girl is better be booking some horror movies. Period. Why is everyone so mean to me? Says the muscle man with the big butt in a shower. Or don't say, oh no, don't unalive yourself. You're so sexy. Girl, bye. Oh my god. They just like bite their lip. Just like, oh no, you're so hot. You're so sexy. Don't. Alright, so this is the reverse of Everybody Dies, and it's multiple characters survive. Honestly, I'm kind of cool with it. I think it has the I kind of like personally when more than one character survive. As much as I love Final Girls, I think if you can make like a really, I think it's actually impressive to make a solid horror movie that like where like you feel that suspense but everybody survives. or at least all the main characters survive. Like if you're still able to create those stakes and make this killer threatening, but then like none of the main characters die, I personally think that that's like impressive filmmaking and writing. But that's just me. I like when there's a reason they survived because it feels like we see, well, they survived because of their own skills. Right. Yeah. Like it's not just them surviving for like for plot. Like you have to justify it. Main character has a dark past. Okay, so my favorite one person, this is going all the way like I said, there's gonna be way too many of these at the top. This is like not a good tier list. I love when like there's like a reveal and it's so corny when it happens, but the reveal is like it's like, oh, I transferred schools because I accidentally killed someone and now they're back and they want revenge, or their sibling wants revenge, and like I'm just trying to hide it from everybody because I'm so ashamed of my past. It was a mistake. People make mistakes and I just wanted to start over. I love that shit. It's so dumb, but like I love an edgy dark main character that's just like running away from something, and like and like, you know, in your mind you're just like, oh, they're running away because they got like bullied at their old school, or like their parents got a divorce, so like they had to change schools because they're separated, or they just, you know, they had like a hard time fitting in, and then it'll be like, no, I like murdered somebody. It was an accident, but like it was still pretty, it was bad enough for like their relatives to want to come hunt me down, or their ghost to haunt me. I love it. I like when the normal nerdy guy reveals at the halfway point that he was the villain the whole time. Love an unreliable. I love unreliable narrators. I know that they gets kind of like overdone, and like there was like a wave of ones that were done kind of poorly after Gone Girl did really well, which by the way also an iconic movie, iconic book. But like I love an unreliable narrator. Abusive family or partner. So that kind of goes into that's like along the same lines of like toxic relationships. I think it's okay. I don't want to say I think toxic relationships are abusive. I almost said this like I think it's fine. I'm just like, no, I don't think that those are like fine. Um I think it can create an interesting sympathetic or empathetic angle for your main character or characters if you're placing them in that situation of struggle. But again, it like also depends. Maybe I should put abusive family partner and toxic relationship both in depends, so that it's like kind of clear that like that like it has to be done. I mean, I feel like the understanding though is like if I'm ranking these high, the assumption is that they have been done well. But I don't know. I'll leave it in good for now. But if that changes as the night goes on, it changes. I will probably like unannounced, but I agree. Like it is a slippery slope, and then like it's like it can be it is definitely very uncomfortable to watch. Sometimes in the way that it is like sort of you intend it to, but sometimes in like a not great way. Maybe I'll you know, I'll put it in like the top of depends. Um and I'll leave toxic relationships where they are because toxic can mean a ton of different things. At least in my mind, when I think of toxic relationships, it can mean like, oh, he's just like a shitty ex that like cheated on you. And then you get to watch him die in this movie. In this movie specifically. And seeing this happen to him in real life would be terrifying. We're not standing that, and I'm not approving of that on my platform, obviously. Kids are the only sensible characters. I think that's boring. Honestly, it's like trash adjacent because I hate when it's just like the parents are being so dumb and the kids are just like so precocious and they're just like, I don't want to go in this house. We have to leave. I don't want to be here. And they're just like, oh, honey, like we'll just be 5 minutes. Like, don't worry, we'll be fine. And like, it's just like everybody's annoying in that situation. I don't like it. The only reason why it's not completely in trash is because of it, basically. Toxic, unsupportive friends. Okay, so I will say I do love a good um okay, so this is gonna sound bad. And I just want to say I don't support toxic and unsupportive friends IRL, and I also don't support gaslighting. But I feel like gaslighting is like a core element to like a good slasher, right? Like the main character or characters are being doubted, and it just becomes like a vessel for talking about like authority not believing you when like you need it to most. I think the added element of it being like your friends and like this like friend group is like absolutely shitty and you need to outgrow them almost sort of transitions it into like a bit of a coming of age story almost. And like I love coming of age personally, so I am personally like I like toxic, like comically toxic unsupportive friends are fun. Serious toxic unsupportive friends that are being punished for being unsupportive and being terrible assholes, I think that's also great. It's yeah, exactly. It's like also super relatable. I 100% agree. So like there is like a little bit of a catharsis to it. Would I inject it into my bloodstream? I don't know. Maybe. But I at the same time I feel like I put so much up there. So I feel like I need to start weaning these down. Cuz I can't have so many in iconic and then like not care. Um I'll put it at the top of iconic. Cuz sometimes it can be kind of annoying to watch, but for the most part I love it. Sarcastic, snarky best friend. Ooh, okay, so that's a depends. That's a hard depends. Because if they're not funny, then like, and it just falls flat every time that their line delivery isn't good, then like I don't care. Also, I totally recognize that I ended up using the same emoji for sarcastic, snarky best friends and person of color dies first. We're gonna ignore it. I made these over a span of a couple of days. Well, a day and a half actually. I shouldn't be fucking lying. And it slipped through the cracks. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll do better next time. I just didn't catch it. Unlikely survivor. Okay. Unlikely. I love the unlikely survivor. Like as much as I love people sort of making it out alive based on like the merits of like their own perseverance and their survival skills and being like resourceful. I like projecting that onto an unlikely survivor as well, mostly because it's just like I like to imagine that if I was ever in this situation, me, the 5'3", 104, 105 pound like twink, would somehow make it out alive. It's because it's just another underdog story, you know? It's usually the corny white guy, but at least it's helpful. I mean, yeah. But when can it be me? When is it my turn? When do I get to be the sassy gay best friend that doesn't die? I'm not even sassy. That's the sad part. I'm not even doing my job right. Okay, female character, very clearly written by a man. Garbage, trash, usually very pervy. We don't love it, but it happens so much. So much. Main character turns 18 at the begin. I should specify at the beginning of the movie or at some point during the film. Again, I love coming of age movies. I feel like horror is like a very interesting way to deliver a coming of age narrative. So a birthday scene where they turn 18 or even 16, like if it's a sweet 16 one, like that works too. Like I personally like that, but at the same time I understand why it can read as like being creepy or being like a way to justify the terrible things that are like about to happen to this main character. It's just like, oh well, they're an adult, so they can now they're old enough to witness murder and trauma. Which is just like, no, Stephen King said like I don't care what age you are, we are all being traumatized. I feel like them turning 21 would be great because then I could see how they handle stress with a stiff drink. Okay, but like teen drinking though in these like movies. Ooh, fuck. I'm like remembering all of these like good ones I should be throwing out, but like teen drinking was like one that I wish I had put on the list. There's so many I wish I'd put on the list, but teen drinking is definitely one of them because they all it's always at the worst time, like they're all passed out and shit. But also, oh, R&R, not me accidentally opening up an unrelated app on my computer. Um, Differing clicks come together. I think is fine. It's fine. Um, it's again like I like an underdog. I like these sort of character dynamics you can have with it, but like it's not original. Most films are gonna like go with that, you know. But like again, I do think about the horror movies that like all of a sudden you have like you have the jock, you have the cheerleader, you have like the shy Christian girl, you have the nerd, sort of like all trapped in like a gymnasium or whatever, and like they have to work together. Like it's fine. It is nice to see people who don't like each other work together and like their relationships grow as a result of it, and then they get to grow as people. Like it can be a nice way to direct your plot. It's a straightforward character arc, but like can it be fun to watch? Yes, I think so anyway. The goths and the jocks work together to cast a spell that's high in protein. Oh my god, yes. Family moves into clearly creepy house. That's gonna go kind of similarly into like me hating that the kids are like the only sensible characters. Like I understand like they know that we as an audience are like yelling at these people on screen to be like, why are you living here? It's like we got this house for really cheap and we just want to like renovate it because we're in our HGTV era. And it's just like literally somebody died on this property. That is the only reason why you got it for this cheap, okay? And it also looks like shit. It looks like a freaking crack den, all right? Like chill. It's like, oh, but it could be such a charming bed and breakfast. Like just can you just like imagine if like this torn off wallpaper was like orphan blue? Like I don't fucking know. Look at this. Like oh, it's like yeah, a bunch of people died here, and this was like the home of like a serial killer at some point in history. But look at this crown molding. Like that is a priceless bit of history. Mom in the new house. Nonsense, honey. That blood on the walls is a feature of the house. Others entertaining in American Horror Story season 1. I agree, but I always feel like American Horror Story was like, I mean, like, granted, not always, but and sort of to like varying effects, but it has to me like it has at least slanted a little bit into like at least it has like elements of like comedy in it. So like I can forgive when really stupid shit happens because then it's like oh yeah, that's American Horror Story doing AHS things again, but um obviously certain seasons lean more into the comedy more than others. Like I think of Coven quite a bit, but which again, iconic season, but I bet I get why people don't like it. It's definitely gone extremely far into an oddly feminist horror franchise. I have no comment. I am a good feminist. I do not fight with women on this website. Oh my god, we have so many to go over. All right, I'm gonna start going through these a little bit faster. I'm sorry. Main characters have to cover up a crime. So like basically I Know What You Did Last Summer. I love it. It's sort of in the same it's in the same realm of like main character has a dark past for me. Um so I think it's kind of funny to start off like a movie with like your main characters being inherently unsympathetic and like watching them sort of like spiral out of control. That is so entertaining to me. it does suck when like the characters are like unlike, at least like one or two of them are going to be like redeemable or likable though. Like they can't all suck. So like it's not like I'm being annoyed watching them the entire time. Started out cool, but it turns into murdering men with Lovecraftian spells. That is my feminism. Found footage is, it depends. If it's like shot very well. Okay, the thing that I hate about some found footage films, not all, like the iconic ones don't fall into this trap for me. Um, is when it's like I need you to be using the proper camera that it's supposedly being filmed on, in order for this film to work. Because like I'll see like a video camera from like the 90s being used, and then like it'll have like the clarity of like of a movie from like the 2020s. It's like, no, commit to the bit, you know. It like adds like another layer of quote unquote authenticity to it. I like when horror films feel grounded in a way. So like the more, excuse me, the more elements you strip back, the more creative you get to be, in my opinion. So I think found footage can be fine, but like at the same time, the reason why I'm putting it in depends is because it's so overdone at this point, and a lot of the times it's not done well. At least doesn't do like the things that I personally like from that sort of format. If that makes any sense, I don't know. Ooh, peer pressure. Okay, so when I think of like peer pressure in a horror film, I think of like this kid that's being bullied and like has to like prove to this like this group of friends that like they're not like a wimp, but they're not like, oh, if you're not a wuss, go into this like haunted house and like go to like the basement and bring something back, and then like they find a dead body or something down there. I think it's like, okay, the messaging is pretty straightforward when you go with that route, but it's just like, I don't know, sometimes it can be kind of like charming, but um or like kind of just like the dare narrative or whatever. It's like truth or dare. It's like, and it's just like the shy girl that like is scared to say truth because she knows that the popular girl is going to be like, truth or dare. Truth. Okay, do you have a crush on this guy? Like right here. Say it in front, say it to his face, so then you can be rejected in front of like everybody. And she's like, no, dare. I guess I'll say dare. It's like, okay, fine, go into the fucking woods and like don't come back. The villain is the cool kids. Why did I not put the real villain as popularity? Uh, I should have put that down. I'm just like adding more notes mentally in my head to like beat myself up. Okay, I've said this in the past. I don't like assault being in my stories. We're not going to go too deep into it because I don't want to be triggering and I don't know what I'm allowed to talk about, but yeah, we're going to leave it there. Friend goes missing. So this is like as like an inciting incident. It's less so like, oh, like the friends split up and one of them goes missing. This is more like the movie starts off with like, oh my god, my friend has mysteriously disappeared, and then like you unwind like sort of the mystery behind it. I like missing person stories. Do I love it? I'm not sure, but I'm gonna put it in iconic for now because I feel like I feel like that plot device is like a good way to bring in like sort of an everyman type character into the story where I mean it is also kind of like sleuthy a bit. Like it is like sort of like, okay, your main character gets to get put like their Nancy Drew hat on and be like, I have to find my friend. And then it's like the suspense of just like, oh my god, were they murdered? Like where did they go? Were they kidnapped? And then like obviously the reveal is like they were the killer the entire time. They faked their death. It reminds me of Life is Strange because it is. Um, main character is framed is all okay. So I'm gonna say it's iconic, but I do go back and forth on it because I'm just like, on one hand, like we love a gaslighter narrative, and like this character coming into themselves and learning to stand up for themselves and feel like more confident and assured of themselves by the end. Um, but it can be frustrating to like watch this character get blamed for something like over and over again, and like sometimes like it's not too, it doesn't drag the narrative too much by showing like how much people hate this person now. Um, but I mean it can be like annoying. I mostly like it though because it does create like urgency, because it's just like I only have so much time to prove that I'm innocent before like another murder happens or something. um which I like. I again, I like plots that have like a sense of urgency to them, and like when you, this is specifically a device to me that I think kind of forces a timeline for a character. Cryptic premonition or prophecy. um it's fine. It's fine. As long as it doesn't use like a really corny fortune teller, then like I'm usually cool with it. um but like somebody having a dream about something that happens later on in the movie, it's like it is kind of cheesy, but I don't have anything really against, like, against that trope personally. Cursed family heirloom. Mm, I think it's boring adjacent. um I'll put it at the top of boring because it's kind of ends up overlapping a lot with creepy dolls, but it at least gets to be a little bit more specific. And then it gives you sort of a clear out to the story of just like, oh, well, how do you stop the killer or like the threat or whatever. It's like, you have to destroy it. You have to like burn your grandmother's locket or something so her soul can be freed from World War II. Okay, American remakes, literally problematic. Let Train to Busan be Train to Busan and like let it exist. Okay. Let foreign films, like foreign horror films, be popular. You don't always have to remake something with like Western values. Okay, some of us like to watch, um, like to watch things that are from a culture outside of our own. Thank you very much. I don't know if it's actually problematic or if it's just trash. It's kind of both to me, but I don't know how everybody else feels. Remakes and reboots. Okay, I'll be honest. It depends. I've seen some pretty solid like reboots and remakes, to be honest. Like ooh, you know what? No, I don't want that. I don't want that specific opinion to be public on the internet. But let's just say I don't hate every remake or reboot. I hate a lot of them, but some of them are okay. Some of them fix, actually, like some of the ones that like do aggressively try to course correct a problematic aspect of like the older film, like don't make me completely roll my eyes. So main characters are tourists. So okay, so again, if it's Midsummer related, it's gonna go kind of high. Um, so first of all, it seems like the horror movie stuff that I like is generally based around an anxiety I already have, and then I just get to safely explore it in a movie. It's not really that psychologically deep or complicated into why I would find it enjoyable. I do get paranoid of like if I travel like abroad and like something bad happens to me, but I'm more like worried of like being framed for like a crime like when I'm overseas or getting arrested than I am of like running into a cult. But like I guess it could happen. I mean, I guess I could be human trafficked if I'm like abroad, and that's like sort of the center of like the horror, I guess. But I like it. Would I say it's iconic though? I wouldn't say it's iconic, but it is one that I really like. But I think it's just kind of good. Creepy phone call. Boring. Sorry. It's like a lot of just. I don't like when actors have to like try to put on this like they put on a creepy voice. Personally, I think it's kind of lame. Frank goes horribly wrong. So this is kind of it's in the same vein of me for like main characters are covering up a crime. I feel like it's such a classic trope to be like, we didn't mean to kill her. We just like we just threw her in the back of her trunk and she just like died or something. It's like we thought it was just a joke. We didn't think that she'd, actually be dead when we opened up the trunk. She should just take jokes less seriously, It's God. Everyone in this day and age is so sensitive. Sensitive to head trauma, God. Okay, so useless cops. Okay. Um Okay, so first of all, fuck the pigs. But also it's such a staple in horror. And like I think originally I'd be like, oh my god, it's so annoying that like nobody ever believes them. But I'm just like, no, this is like honestly, these movies are what taught me to like question authority. And I think that's kind of like a mood. Like it's like provocative. It's thought provoking. I'm acting like it's deeper than it actually is. It's mostly just like, oh, like it would be too easy if you had like a like the FBI get involved with like this case, but they don't want to like bring in like a broader group. But it is actually just like, don't trust authority. You're on your own, kid, kind of deal. I mean, like it is like frustrating when they're like so stupid and like unhelpful that it like hinders the plot, but at the same time it's just like, okay, but like also fuck 12. Oh yeah, useless cops. My mom loves Lifetime movies. The fear that cops can't protect anybody. I mean, like, I just want to say that like sometimes they're actually the threat, but you didn't hear it from me. You didn't hear it from me. I mean, you did. I mean, I feel like everybody like in chat like kind of agrees with me to like some level, but this just clarified for me why the cops were stupid in Scream Queens. I loved how like cartoonishly dumb the cops were in Scream Queens. That being said, R.I.P. Denise. She was the one character I did not want to die. Car won't stop. Boo, boring. Tripping and falling. Okay, so tripping and falling during a chase. It is annoying, but at the same time, sometimes it is kind of funny. But I think I'm still gonna stick with it like being in boring. I don't hate it, but it's I'll put it, how about this? I'll put it on the high end of boring because sometimes it's funny. Trip to the library or the archives. It's okay. I love this because it's so funny to think that your public library just happens to have like a clue to ending a 500-year-old curse. I'm ready for the villain as a car and it's a serial killer car. Wasn't that Christine? Or was that the name of like the movie? That was like the, or was it ever made into, I thought it was made into a movie. I know it was for sure it was a book and it was like about like a killer car, but and then there's also oh, it wasn't a car, but like what was it? It was like it was a horror movie that was based off of this like rogue tire that like anything it runs into like explodes. I forgot what it's called. Is it just called Burning Rubber? Or this is so easily Googleable, excuse me. Horror movie about tire. Yeah, okay, it's called Rubber. It's like a horror comedy about like a car tire that comes to life with the power to make people explode and goes on a murderous rampage through the Californian desert. It's so funny. It's so dumb. My college roommate introduced me to that movie. Okay, killer is right behind you. I would have said corny, but like then I remember that It Follows is a thing, and that reminds me that it's iconic. I mean, there is something very special about the experience of like yelling at like your like the movie screen when like a character is very clearly like about to be killed, and like if they had any sense of spatial awareness, they would know that like they're being stalked. But oh my god, that's kind of how I felt with like I mean, it's safe to talk about Multiverse of Madness spoilers, right? It's been a couple weeks since it's been out. It's not really like fully a spoiler, but like when they're being like chased by Wanda um in the archives, funnily enough, um and like they close like a bunch of like the doors behind them, and she keeps breaking through all of them. So like when they close the final one, like one of the last ones, and then they just like stop there instead of keep running, I was literally like in my mind I was screaming at them so hard. I was like, what the fuck are you, why'd you stop? Did you just like run out of doors? Because like if that's the case, you literally cornered, why did you run into like a dead end? That's I mean, I think that was kind of like the impression eventually anyway, that they would like run out of places to run, which is like, I know it's standard horror movie fare, but like it was kind of dumb. I did kind of roll my eyes at it a lot. I remember that moment. I thought the same, right? It's so, oh my god, I hated it. There were elements of that movie that, I mean, I already talked about it for like 2 hours. I don't need to reopen that bandage. Let's Split Up is a staple, but it's not a fun staple. I'm gonna put it in boring. It's corny. And like not in a fun way. Phone goes off with killer nearby. I hate that trope so much. It's so lame. It's very, very boring. I actually will go as far to say that it's trash, because it's such lazy conflict. It doesn't feel like an active like obstacle that's being presented to them. And then it's also just the most frustrating thing about it is just like all of these people don't have their phones on vibrate, and I'm like, bitch, you're really gonna have like your ringtone play like out loud even outside of this high stress scenario? Like you couldn't think about like turning your volume off like while you're hiding underneath that bed in the mental asylum? Mm-mm. Oh, that's like another one that I didn't put on the list. Was like the setting is like an asylum. I didn't put that on the list. I 100% should have. I completely forgot. I think it was because I put killer is mentally ill, and then like my brain was just like, okay, that's you covering mental illness stigma in like the horror genre. And she's like, well, no, there's more. Phone dies, no reception. I think that's also, I'm gonna put the phone girlies next to each other, even though you can kind of slightly see that they're off kilter in comparison to each other. I'm gonna do it because it's visually frustrating to look at. Nanny cam, baby monitor scare, boring. Jump scares. I hate jump scares. They're growing in trash. Only out of spite. There isn't anything like inherently wrong with them. I just don't like them. Killer isn't really dead. Is that iconic, or do I want to inject it into my bloodstream? I think I'll just say it's iconic. Also, I want to delineate this from like, finally it's all over, or is it? You know, kind of like it's kind of separate from that. I think this is more like there's like a death fake out for the killer, and then like at the very, actually I guess I am talking about like the very end, like they turn out to be alive, or it's implied that they're alive. Yeah, I don't know. I'll put an iconic. I feel like it's like it's good haunting imagery, even if it's not always like them like their hand shooting up like out of the grave in like a very a very corny, very 80s manner. This isn't a movie. Oh my god, like what? Why would you even say that? It's not like this stuff happens in real life anyway. Like get real, Carly. I don't fucking know. Get real, Shirley. This isn't a movie. It's time to be realistic, and then like it'll be like, oh, by the way, we were being hunted by a witch. No, I hate that, like, not even just in horror. I hate that in like literally every movie genre. It's just like, oh, if this was a movie, things would be so different. It's like, shut up. At this point, I feel like writers know that it annoys people when they write that. I shot him in the head. Wait, he's still alive. Okay, well that's funny because then like person who's never fired a gun gets a lucky shot. Um, I think this is so goofy. I don't personally love it. It's not really fun to watch. Um, I also, oh my god, I can't believe I forgot to put bullet sponge. I did put Stormtrooper aim though. I also think Stormtrooper aim is like annoying to watch. But yeah, I can't believe I forgot to put bullet sponge, where like the killer very clearly should have died, and then like they just didn't. Like they just keep walking towards you, but like they're not like a supernatural entity. They're just like a regular ass person. It's one thing if you're like talking about like Mr. X or something, where he's like a titan, but it's just like it's fucking Billy from third period, and like they have a knife literally stuck in their neck and their hand is cut off, and they're just like menacingly like walking towards you and be like, here's Billy. It's like, okay, dude, like shut the fuck up, dude. Hospital chase. I don't like hospitals, which is why I will enjoy a good hospital chase, um but it's just good. I'm not like goo goo gaga over hospital chases. Local weirdo has all the, okay, so this is sort of like the it's like the local nutcase kind of deal, where it's like, oh, it's this old lady that is like always talking nonsense, but like it's because she's misunderstood, and she actually has the gift of prophecy, and she knows like how to end this 1,000-year curse. Or it's like the drunk guy who's like always passed it out at the bar, but in like the 11th hour he becomes like their key to surviving the night. It's like kind of that deal. I I'll say it's fine. I kind of like at least the idea of like, just not underestimating somebody. If but it's not necessarily great mental health representation if you're like, oh, you should listen to this like woman who's like who's like psychologically disturbed, if like she can help you, kind of thing. And then like she's just kind of like cast to the side as like a social pariah or whatever. Like that's not great, but I don't know. I don't think they ever think that deeply about it though. They just need like the weird guy to like throw like a cryptic message that's going to be helpful at the very end of the story, and is like the make or break moment of a movie. Killer in rearview mirror. Um, the homage doesn't really do anything for me anymore. This is like an instance of like the nostalgia is like lost on me, I think, and like the classic nature doesn't translate well. I don't know how else to convey it. I don't know, it just doesn't do anything for me anymore. Killer is redeemed by the end. I think really depends. I mean, I think that's a given though, that it depends on like how they do it. I know it's like kind of similar to like the killer is just misunderstood like situation, but like redeeming the killer is like, that seems very hard to do. So if you actually attempted it, I kind of almost respect how ballsy that is. But it is it is certainly a unique choice, to say the least. Sorry, I just got like a message. I was just checking it. I'm just distracted. Hold your breath scene. Oh my god. Okay, so I don't know if anybody else, I'm gonna put this in iconic, by the way. Even if it's like kind of forced tension that's like kind of corny. I personally feel it very viscerally during a chase scene. But I don't know if anybody else does this or like sort of it's like I don't even it's not an active decision for me to do this. So like if I'm watching a movie or a show where like a character is like almost going to drown and you can just like see them like swimming very frantically and like holding their breath, does anyone else sort of like instinctively feel very self-conscious about their own breathing when they watch that happen, or like maybe they even hold their breath themselves when they watch it? Because I do that literally all the time and it's so annoying. I'm hoping that's not just me, because that is a very weird experience to have, and to be the weirdo that is the only one that has it is like, it's not a comforting vibe. Yes, I do. Okay, thank you. I knew I couldn't have been the only one. I literally do it every single time and I hate it. It's similar to when they fall from a high place in camera is their POV. Okay, so this is like pseudo related, but like whenever I'm playing a game that like has fall damage, I really I feel you plummeting and falling when that happens. Which is why when I started playing battle royales that like don't have fall damage in them, if I'm jumping off of like a tall building, because it's like encouraged in the game in order to traverse like a space in a very short amount of time, I can literally feel my like stomach fall out of my asshole. Like I feel like my whole body lurch when like I as like I'm falling, and then they just kind of land in a superhero pose and they're fine, and I'm just kind of like, girl, your legs, are they good or they ain't broke? Improvised weapons, honestly, we love a little DIY moment. I like it. I like when like the I like when the main characters are like wow, this is very great sentence structure. Um you're like backed into a corner and you have to use your own ingenuity in order to defend yourselves. So like if you're like given like a non-traditional weapon to protect yourself and like you make it work, that is like some boss bitch DIY girl boss energy that I stan. So I love that for you. That was the stupidest thing I feel like I've ever said on this podcast, but like I feel it. I feel that with my whole ass. Okay, ending narration. Ending narration is like a hard depends for me. I feel like I think my thing with like ending narration is like if there hasn't been narration for the rest of the movie, like not even in the intro, it feels so weird to have that as like your closing credits call, is like this character sort of narrating like the epilogue of like your movie, especially because it's just like you're not legally blonde. Okay, like I don't really care most of the time about like what they're doing after this traumatic event. There's just like, oh, on this evening 15 high school students died, um but Kelly Walsh went to law school after graduation. It's like, no, I do not care. It feels a little rushed, yeah. No, definitely. And also, and like the other part of it too is just like I feel like a lot of I feel like when writers don't trust themselves to have their themes be accessible and like understandable like by their audience, uh, and they feel like they have to like literally write out the thesis statement of a movie in the epilogue. It's just like that is like a great way to ruin an okay movie for me. Killed while tinkling in the woods. I don't like this trope because I don't like fake urine in uh in anything really. Like fake piss is just kind of like gross to me. So when you're fusing that with like a guy getting murdered, like he's just like taking a piss in the woods, like it's like fucking Boy Scout camp, which I also hated. Um, and then like he gets his like dick chopped off or something. I'm just like, okay, I'm turning off this movie. Bye. Like it's weird. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it. Same thing with like Must Have Been the Wind. I know I can appreciate it like as a meme for video games, but in movies it's very frustrating. But like in fucking Elder Scrolls, I think it's hilarious. Main character hallucinates. So this kind of goes into like the same territory of like for me anyway, kind of like an unreliable narrator slash unhinged protagonist who's like descending into madness. That is my shit. I love like an unhinged main girly who's like fighting for her fucking life to get out of this nightmare mess, but like she also like needs a Xanax, you know? I shouldn't be joking about that, but at the same time, I feel like I can because I'm very mentally unwell. Nobody believes the main character. Again, we here at the Girl Next Door podcast love gaslighting narratives. That's a weird statement to make, but like I stand by it. Okay, I love in like when like in the finale they're proven to be right and that they weren't like crazy the entire time. Like that feels very validating for me as like somebody who's like very anxious about literally everything, has thought spirals constantly, and like fears that the absolute worst is going to happen at any given moment. And then feels rewarded for being overly cautious. Like that is my dose of serotonin, I think, for like the year. That's sad. I don't know why I said that out loud. Story is lost the time / becomes an urban legend. Honestly, so true, bestie. I feel like that like sadly happens a lot. Like there'll be like a mass murder and then like I think it's like, okay, I don't want to say it's like easier for it to like gain notoriety like before the internet, because those stories are still lost to the time if like they've only been chronicled in print. But at the same time, it's just like I feel like they at least stick with the community for like another like several years, whereas like the internet makes you feel so hyper aware of every terrible thing that happens around you that it's just like, oh my god, I can't believe there was a serial killer in like my town. But here's a here's another serial killer in like that's like a city literally on the other side of the country, and I'm gonna give the same amount of emotional bandwidth to both. It's like it's so weird. Maybe I'm the only one that does that, but I don't know. Like I feel like my ADHD cannot keep up with the news cycle a lot of the time, unless it's like very very depressing. Which then it becomes like a challenge of like, okay, well maybe I'm a little bit too tapped into something that I should actually actively be avoiding for my mental well-being. Food for thought from my therapist, I guess. Looks like the coast is clear, fake out. Big yawn. Big yawn. Is it trash? No, but is it boring? Hell yeah. Killer is stopped by divine intervention. We need to stop taking the agency away from our protagonists when it comes to ending conflict, okay? I think the main character is allowed to have a little bit of blood on their hands by the end of the story if it's in self-defense. Shower scene, I don't... Shower scene is kind of... It's not inherently problematic, but I still don't love it. Except, with the exception of the iconic scene from Psycho. That is the only acceptable horror movie shower scene. but it's like it's tastefully done. It's like it doesn't feel exploitative. It doesn't feel like it's looming on her body. It's not trying to be creepy. It's just like a very vulnerable moment. Rescued by God is a funny trope. It can be, but I think if I'm like so invested in like somebody surviving for an entire movie, and then like God decides at the last minute that this is when they're gonna save them, it's just like, okay, you know, kind of a dick move, God. We're unstanding. You let all my friends die, but like you saved me at the very last minute by like sending a rogue thunderbolt down to kill this exact person and like not hurt me at all in the process. I don't know, kind of sus. Hero becomes villain. I think it depends on like the type of villain, but I think overall I'm like I do like it, even though if it is like kind of corny. I do enjoy it. I do enjoy a good hero reversal arc. Or at the very least, maybe not even like just like fully villain, but like at least morally gray. Because like I think the trauma does change them. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, and sometimes it's like a good for her scenario, you know? Like it's a Vivitch, or it's your Midsommar, it's your... Well, I maybe not Midsommar, because she didn't do anything really wrong in that movie, but except like... except be dragged around a lot, I guess. I guess that's not really her fault. She was like in an abusive relationship, but... It was all a dream, or was it... Bye. I think across most genres, that's bad. Except for Shark Boy and Lava Girl, which I watched very recently with my boyfriend. That is the only time I will accept it was all a dream, or was it, as like a plot device. Hunter becomes hunted. We love an empowerment arc. This is my fight song, take back my life song. We love flipping the script, what can I say? Very unsubtle social commentary. Okay, on one hand, like it is very like I don't love on the nose storytelling, but at the same time, like sometimes accessibility is okay. And like if you're really exploring that very simple theme very well, then it can be fine. It can feel rewarding, and like at least like even if it like handles the subject poorly, at least I'm like complaining about it with like my friend in the car after we finish watching it. Okay, so dead character is actually alive. I should have clarified that it's like a friend or supporting character who dies, or so like allegedly dies earlier in the film, is actually alive the whole time and saves them in the 11th hour. I know that it's like kind of adjacent to like an act of God saving the main character, but like if it's a character that I really like and they just kind of like show up for like their bestie at the end, it does feel nice. I can overlook how contrived it kind of makes the plot a little bit. Oh my god, the janitor playing music too loud so they don't hear either the killer coming up to like, you know, kill them, or they don't hear somebody being murdered in the background. Feel like that was like funny for like 5 minutes, and then I see it literally all the time, and I'm just like, this is corny. Corny as fuck. Time skip? There's a lot of depends, but like on this list. I feel like I need to start moving these around probably, because I'm putting so many that I love and then like not enough into like other stuff. But I also knew that this was probably gonna happen. I'm very easily excitable. Running from killer in underwear. It's not okay, so it's not intrinsically problematic in most cases. Well, in some cases, I guess, because in a lot of cases it is just really pervy, which you can argue like is problematic.
Um, but I don't know. I don't like it. I'm not a fan. It's again, it's like exploitation films influence and also just being pervy. That kind of overlap. Not a fan personally. As much as it would be my luck that I would be chased by a serial killer and I wouldn't have time to put clothes on. Like this would be me, but it's still very goofy. Flashback exposition we need to throw away. I do not like flashbacks that are entirely narrated over. Um, show not tell is there for a reason. If you're already like giving us like a visual explanation to what's happening, you don't need to narrate. Like you don't need to like ADR a character being like, it was the summer of 1972. I woke up that morning at 8 o'clock and got out of bed and brushed my teeth, and then I remembered I hadn't had breakfast yet. And it's just like, okay, can we skip to the important part of where you like screwed the witch's daughter and then she got mad and then she cursed your family or some shit? Like keep it short and sweet, okay? Be a better writer, God. Fan favorite makes a cameo. I get the appeal, but fan service doesn't really. Fan service rarely works for me, to be honest. Like I'll never be like, oh my god, that's like that person is like from the original movie from like the 80s, and he's showing up in a movie in 2013. Wow. Like it doesn't do anything for me. I would say probably doesn't do a lot for like other people either, but it definitely doesn't do anything for me. Not me saying that like I hope this doesn't turn into a 3 hour stream and it's 3 hours. I just looked at the timestamp. That's okay. We're almost done. Killer is caught. Or are they? I think that's fine. It's not as like lame as some of them could be. But it's not quite iconic. It's because it's like it's not like a return from the dead kind of like reveal. It just kind of makes me feel more depressed about the justice system. You don't like when David Hasselhoff shows up for no reason? I only like David Hasselhoff in like the SpongeBob movie because there's zero context. Okay, so a romantic subplot. I'll be honest, a lot of the times they don't make any sense and they're usually dumb and there's usually not very good chemistry, but like I'm a sucker for a good romance subplot. I know it's like definitely not the right time to be falling for somebody, but it's just like, okay, but trauma bonding, you know? Or is that just me? I don't know. I think it can be, I wouldn't say it's cute, but it's like, I'm just like imagining it's just like, oh, well, let me tell you about how I met your mother. And then it's like, it just like cuts to like them being trapped inside a storage shed while like zombies are trying to yank the doors off. They're like, oh, by the way, I'm Kit. Evil twin reveal. Okay, so this is a type of dumb plot twist that I love. It's so, I wouldn't say campy, but like kind of. It is very goofy. It feels very Days of Our Lives. But you put it in a horror context and like you have my heart. Especially if it's really poorly acted. Like it's like the act like it's just the actor trying to like do an evil version of themselves, but they just have like a shit-eating grin and just try to like be like a little bit more sarcastic and snarky when they like reveal that they were the killer the whole time. And then there's a whole convoluted backstory about how they were separated at birth. It's definitely in the category of like it's so bad it's good. At least I think so anyway. Dropping or forgetting weapons. Okay, so I hate when like they they've survived an encounter, they've disarmed the killer, and then they don't take the weapon. It's like at that point you deserve to get like unalived by the antagonist in this movie. Also, I'm going back to being a cult girly. I love a good seance. Especially if it like involves a blood pact. Oh my god. The scene from the seance from Scream Queen season 1 is so good. If you haven't watched it, just look it up on YouTube. It's really funny. Bystanders think it's part of a performance. Honestly, it's pretty corny, but it is like a little bit. It is a little funny to me. Like I'm just like imagine it's just like this girl is being chased around campus in her underwear by this guy who's like trying to stab her, and then people just have their phones out. I'm just like, yeah, no, this seems about right. Like it's just like, oh, this is just a performance art piece. Funeral epilogue. It depends on if like the funeral. I don't know. I think maybe it is kind of more. I'll put it in high boring because if it's a character that I really liked that died and they're getting recognized for sacrificing themselves, then like I'm okay with it. But for the most part, it's like again, it's just ending narration and then it's just them trying to like explain their friendship to like the audience who like either already knows about this connection between these characters or could assume it on their own because of like how close they've been the entire movie. I mean, nothing makes me more upset though than like two characters that have never interact that like rarely interact in this entire movie, and at the very end they just sort of like tell us that they were best friends and that they've been best friends since kindergarten, and I'm just like, I didn't even know you knew each other's names. Mirror scare, boring. Window scare, boring. Rocking chair moves on its own, boring. Sorry, I'm being a little bit of a broken record here, but some of these like aren't great for me. Animal sense killer before the character does. That's honestly like it is. I don't love it because it goes back to like the main characters are just stupid. So I'm gonna put it next to kids are the only sensible characters in family moves into clearly creepy house, because like you're just kind of you're setting yourself up at that point, man. I'm sorry. Main characters don't recognize the killer in disguise is like it's like another example of like a character like your character's just being really dumb, but I don't hate it as much as like the other instances of your characters being dumb. The animal sensing things makes it sad because they're never listened to, right? And then like I'm just like imagining like in like the mind of like your pet of like just feeling so ignored, and like when something bad happens like they might not understand what it is. um it's like oh god, what was the shit, who was the comedian that like made a song where they're just like dogs will never know how much you love them as like one of like the lyrics in it? Somebody please find that for me. If not, I will find it later. I distinctly remember that being a song lyric or something as like part of like a comedy bit. I forget who said it. Okay, and last but not least, dead body disappears. Again, I love a good gaslighting narrative, and like the idea that like That's that like fine. I mean, it does go hand in hand with like the useless cops things or just useless authority, where you're just like, see, like I'm not crazy. This person's been chasing me, and like they killed Beth, and like she's right here, and like the body's just gone, and they just look at her just like, okay, well somebody wanted attention today. It's like it's so vexing, but like, is it a good gaslight gatekeep girl boss plot? Absolutely. The woman behind the window. Oh my god, I still need to watch the woman in the house across wait, what was the name of like Kristen Bell's thriller comedy satire or whatever? Oh yeah, the woman in the house across the street from the girl in the window. I know it's gotten like mixed reviews, but like honestly, um like I do love poking fun at like the explosion of that genre after Gone Girl. I still have to watch it too. I completely forgot. Yeah, oh god. It just looks really fun. And like the clips I did see on Twitter seemed pretty entertaining. But like we just I don't know. I have like I vibe with sort of like the unhinged like bored suburban mom slash just like woman uh character that is like slowly losing her sanity, and is like questioning everything around her, and it's like, is it the pills, ma'am, is it the drinking? It's like, no, somebody's like actually trying to like murder me and steal my family fortune or whatever. um but yeah, so that's our list. Kristen Bunn, hello. Kristen Bell making fun of things is great. I love Kristen Bell. But that being said, that is the entirety of our horror movie tropes tier list. That took 3.5 hours to do, roughly, kind of, sort of. Um, I wish I had like a good closer for this. I think I mostly can just say that like this was a lot of fun to make, even more fun to record. Um, I will be waiting for Hollywood execs to ask for all of my screenplays about horror movies they definitely should make, because they will all be terrible, and I need that kind of fun, terrible horror movie in my life right now, because I have not felt joy since watching Rubber, about the tire that that goes on a killing spree. No, that's not true though. Like I again, I have like a love-hate relationship with horror as a genre. I definitely love horror as an aesthetic. It just, sitting through the movies isn't always fun for me because I'm very sensitive to loud noises, and like obviously I'm like very squeamish when it comes to gore. So it's like it's hard to find like a good balance for me. It's why like usually I'm more likely to enjoy thrillers over horror films, but like horror just like has a very unique, like grim aesthetic to it. Well, obviously because it's horror. So and that's something that's like sort of hard to replicate, which is why whenever I'll see like a movie that like incorporates horror elements, um, like Multiverse of Madness, for example, like it's why I tend to I'll gravitate towards it. I was literally talking to my sister the other day because like I was manifesting a Marvel horror movie for so long, and then we like sort of get it with Multiverse of Madness, and I'm just like, okay, well, if I'm gonna continue to manifest things, the next thing that I want is a Star Wars horror movie. Um, Straight up. But with all that being said, I will be. Ooh, this is gonna probably take a little while to like edit and upload, but I'm gonna try to get it up by tomorrow around the usual time, which is usually noon. Again, I'm going to have the links to the information and to the the donation links for the families of that were affected by the shooting in Texas. I'm also going to have, this is kind of like, this part is less important. I don't know why I framed them next to each other like this because it feels awkward, but I will also include the links to this tier list in case you want to make it. I will be posting the full thing like on Twitter, probably on my personal account more than the actual one for Girl Next Door because I never use it. I feel like I should change my socials tab at this point because I never touch it, but oh fuck, you know, I just realized, did I not post a live message on Twitter? Oh, that's funny. Why do I always forget to? I actually remember to do it on like a bunch of other platforms, in like a bunch of like self-promo discords, but I didn't remember to do it for Twitter. That's so that's embarrassing. I'm looking at my drafts right now. And I also have I have unposted live messages for a bunch of other streams too. So maybe I need to be better at at reminding myself to do that. But yeah, I'll probably post that to my personal account. That's at not Sean or Sean. That will be linked in the description. It's also in my social tabs right now, I think, on Twitch, in case you want them for whatever reason. I do literally nothing on there but shitpost and be very toxically unfunny. You can ooh, wait, okay, so when I did my intro earlier, somebody's gonna have to, oh, I guess I'll find out when I edit this later. I'm so used to saying I stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and sometimes Fridays, but like I have to get used to saying Mondays, Thursdays, and sometimes Fridays, and for some reason that's been a lot harder than like it actually should be. I think it's probably embarrassing to my ancestors, and will definitely be embarrassing to my posterity that my brain can't remember to just move the days by one day when I do my outro. But yeah, I stream Mondays, Thursdays, and sometimes Fridays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/Girl Next Door Podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, come follow, come join, come have fun. We literally talk about whatever. If you've followed this channel for a bit, you probably know that I never have any any semblance of a theme when I pick topics. I'll keep you posted actually about what next week's stream schedule is going to be, because I'm sort of starting to become busier with some personal projects on the side that I want to be able to focus on, and sometimes prepping for stream gets in the way of that. But for the most part, I think things should be as per usual. What else am I missing? Besides just saying like thank y'all again for coming through and keeping me company and keeping me entertained. I probably won't stream tomorrow, just because I'm going to be doing community night on another channel. So the next stream will most likely be Monday. I don't know what I'm talking about yet. I'll probably tweet about it or post it on my Instagram story over the weekend. What else? God, we love having our outro down to a science. But thanks again for everybody who came through and like joined in the discussion, and I guess I'll talk to everybody soon. Bye.